Hi guys, it's me ChazzaHD and welcome to the qualifying watch-along for the 2023 Miami Grand Prix weekend. I hope you're all doing well on the first weekend of May. And yeah, no matter where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world, hope you're all having as best a time as possible. Personally, I've had a pretty good day. I've been out and about, obviously, in my part of the world. Qualifying taking place quite late at night. Yeah, I've had a good day so far. And as I said in my weekend preview last night, which was quite pessimistic, I have to say, I think what, we've got coming up in an hour and a half's time is going to be really, unless we get a downpour on Sunday, I think what we've got coming up here is going to be the highlight of the weekend. Qualifying at street circuits is normally it has the potential to be very good. I still don't like the Miami track that much, but yeah, I mean, it's got the potential to definitely be a lot better than the race on Sunday. So, yeah, I am looking forward to a certain extent to this qualifying session. And maybe not at the very front, but definitely in the midfield. And really from 5th place down, it's looking very exciting. The field and very close as well. So yeah, we are going to get probably some shocks and surprises, which we have had a few of in qualifying so far in 2023 in today's qualifying session. And as you can see on the top left of the screen, qualifying gets underway in an hour and 28 minutes from now. And yeah, again, hope all you guys are doing well. Now, I think what I'll do before I properly get into my build-up to qualifying, we're going to start obviously previewing the session itself by going into data from practice 2, which of course took place yesterday at not quite the time that qualifying will be taking place, but at a more representative time of day. We'll get into that data soon, but in a moment, I will get up on screen the results of practice 3. Practice 3 finished about an hour ago in Miami. Some quite interesting results, I have to say, in practice 3. But I don't think really we can take much from it in terms of representative lap times and performance, because yeah, it was quite a wacky field in the end. But before I get into showing it and get into my build-up here, just want to lay out what the plan is. So obviously, I'll show you the practice 3 results in a moment, then get into the data from practice 2, which is, again, the most representative data we have going into qualifying as to what is going to happen possibly in qualifying coming up very soon. Then I will give my final prediction for qualifying, and then we'll go through all the teams, and I will get more in-depth into each team as to why I think they'll end up the result that I have gone for. So yeah, that's what we're going to do. And then once we've completed that, I'll obviously read comments from you guys in the chat, hear your predictions, then we'll get into qualifying, and then a reaction we'll be doing as well after the session finishes. So let's just get straight into it, and I will hide the timer for a bit because we are going to get into quite a bit of stuff now, but let me first get into the results of practice 3, and here are those results. So Max Verstappen ended up quickest from Charles Leclerc 2nd, Perez 3rd, Sainz 4th, Ocon 5th, Gasly 6th, and then Bottas, Hulkenberg, Albon, and Russell completing the top 10. And then the rest of the field, Magnussen, Alonso, Hamilton, Stroll, Zhou, Tsunoda, Sargent, Piastri, Norris, and Nick De Vries. Again, I don't think this is really that representative of what the performance is looking like from all the teams this weekend, so I wouldn't pay that much attention to this in terms of the results here. I mean, McLaren at the very bottom, not the very bottom, but very close to the very bottom, they were, a second off Alpine in practice 3. I would be amazed if that was to happen in qualifying, because McLaren have looked as quick, if not quicker, than Alpine all weekend. So, yeah, don't read too much into these lap times. But Max Verstappen in P1 did a 1:27.5. That is, I think 1 second quicker than last year. Is it 1 second? No, sorry, it's 1.2 seconds quicker than last year's pole position. Of course, the grip of the track has improved quite a bit since last year, and that is good because the grip of the circuit last year was quite poor. It still isn't great in places, I have to say. But yeah, 1.2 seconds already quicker than last year's pole position. And I expect the pole position time today to be probably a mid to low 126. I would be very surprised if we got comfortably into the 125s. I think that would be actually quite incredible if they got down into the 125s. But yeah, a mid to low 26, I think most likely will be pole position. So yeah, keep an eye on those lap times through qualifying. But let's now get into the results of practice 2. Again, the more representative practice session on a normal weekend. So yeah, let's just go through these results quickly now before we get into the sector time data, which shows us a bit more as to who is quick and who not. Let me rephrase that. It shows us more of who is quick in certain places and who is, struggling in certain areas. Because with these results, you can't just necessarily know for sure, obviously, where certain teams are losing time in that. So, Max Verstappen in practice 2 did a 127.9, 4 tenths of a second quicker than Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. And Red Bull do seem to be a bit quicker with their car in quali trim than I expected. And yeah, they are going to obliterate everyone this weekend. Qualifying, I have no doubt they'll be on pole position. And for the race, yeah, they're just going to destroy everyone. Carlos Sainz, yeah, 4 tenths back in second. Leclerc probably just over, just over half a tenth, I think it is, to his teammate in third place. And then Sergio Perez just behind the Monegasque driver in fourth. Perez not having a great practice 3, but yeah, Perez, I think, will show a bit more in qualifying. And then it was Alonso 5th, but 3/4 of a second slower than Max Verstappen. And Aston Martin and Mercedes have definitely been quite a bit slower than not just Red Bull, but also Ferrari as well. Ferrari looking quite a bit better at the moment than those two teams. Lando Norris, though, in 6th place, he was a real star of practice 2. And McLaren have shown so far this weekend to have a pretty good car, at least over a single lap. So watch out for them in qualifying today. Lewis Hamilton in P7. Mercedes, both their drivers were very disappointed with what happened yesterday in practice 2. And I think Lewis Hamilton described it as a kick in the guts, given how in practice 1 they were 1st and 2nd, and then practice 2 they were nowhere. Lance Stroll in 8th, a 1/4 of a second slower than his teammate. I think to be expected, really, that type of gap around this place. Esteban Ocon just behind him in P9, and then Alex Albon, very impressively, in P10. Didn't expect Williams to be that quick, to be honest. And then the rest of the field, Gasly in 11th, Magnussen 12th, Zhou 13th, Bottas 14th. Alfa Romeo do seem to be a bit stronger this weekend, which is good to see. Russell 15th, he's really been struggling a bit with the Mercedes car. And practice 2, yeah. He, I think, said that the car just didn't feel right on soft tyres in practice 2. So hopefully for Russell, that's not quite the case in qualifying later. Oscar Piastri, 16th. Piastri, no real surprise, he is struggling to a certain extent because obviously he's never raced around this track. But for him to be 6 tenths of a second almost slower than his teammate around here is a bit excessive. So I would expect him to be, or hope that he'd be a couple tenths of a second closer than that. I'm not expecting him to out-qualify Norris around here because, again, Norris has raced here before, Piastri has not. But, yeah, I'm expecting a bit better from Oscar. Hulkenberg was 17th. Obviously, crashed in practice 1, did Hulkenberg. And then Tsunoda ended up in 18th, with Nick De Vries 19th and Logan Sargent 20th. AlphaTauri, by the way, do look to be very slow from what I've seen so far this weekend. Yeah, those are the results of practice 2. Let's now get into the data from practice 2 and look at the sector times and look at just where certain teams are quick and where certain teams are not quick. So in all of the sectors, by the way, Red Bull are the quickest team. Not miles quicker in every sector compared to all the other teams, but they are the quickest team in all 3 sectors. In Sector 1, which is full of medium to high-speed corners, Red Bull, no surprise, they're the kings through there by almost a tenth of a second. Not from Ferrari or Mercedes or Aston Martin, no, the McLaren of Lando Norris. The first sector, very impressive from McLaren, I have to say. I did not expect McLaren to be as quick as they were in practice yesterday. I mean, I thought they would be in the top 10 this weekend, but I didn't think they would be as competitive as what Norris showed in practice. And McLaren car definitely handling well around here. Still struggling, of course, with too much drag on their car. But in the corners, their car looks really good. No doubt about it. Can't wait till we get to Monaco to see how they perform around there, to be honest. Carlos Sainz in P3. The Ferrari really losing just too much time in the first sector. And really, that is Sector 1 around this track is really the difference between Red Bull and Ferrari this weekend, at least in qualifying. That sector, Red Bull just are absolutely hooked up to the track, and their rear end, the downforce from their rear end is just incredible. The Ferrari, though, isn't quite handling as it needs to really compete with Red Bull in that sector. The Ferrari doesn't like the high-speed corners, I would say, as much as probably the slower speed corners we saw in Baku. Because again, the rear end of the Ferrari is a bit, it can snap a bit compared to the Red Bull, which of course the Red Bull is just a perfect car. Aston Martin just behind the Ferrari there in the first sector. Maybe you could see it as a tad surprising that Aston Martin are slower than Ferrari in the first sector, but they are pretty much on the same pace, so it's not exactly a disaster. Alpine look okay, maybe decent, you could say, in that first sector, but when you consider McLaren and their pace, it really doesn't look that great, does it? Being quarter of a second slower in the first sector alone. And Mercedes, poor in the first sector, which is really a surprise because this car normally handles well in high-speed corners, but Mercedes were quite poor in Sector 1. The Williams surprisingly looked good, and that was a big reason why Alex Albon was in P10 in Practice 2. The Haas, surprisingly slow, 0.4 of a second off the Red Bull in the first sector, and 0.3 of a second slower than the McLaren. So the Haas not handling well, which I did not expect. And then quite clearly, the Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri teams, at the very back of the field, which is not necessarily a surprise. They are most of the time the 2 worst teams on the grid so far in 2023. So no real surprise there. But in the high-speed corners, Red Bull, no surprise, have the quickest car. And then it looks like McLaren have maybe not the absolute outright second best car, but they are in the mix, definitely, with Ferrari and maybe Aston Martin as well. I mean, in the first sector, in practice too, they were definitely quicker, but Ferrari do tend to show, compared to McLaren, a bit extra speed in qualifying than they showed in practice. So, McLaren looking very good in the high-speed corners. Watch out for them in those first sector times in qualifying. And then Ferrari, Aston Martin looking very close. Ferrari just about edging it. Mercedes looking poor and looking more like a midfield team, really. Watch out for Williams as well in that first sector. But interesting results, I would say, in that part of the track, which is very important in setting up a good lap around the Miami International Autodrome. Now, the middle sector, you have a longish DRS zone and then a series of pretty slow corners and pretty Mickey Mouse corners, I would say, leading on to the back straight, which starts the final sector. Again, no surprise in the middle sector. Red Bull, the quicker team, but only by half a tenth from Ferrari, who are really only losing out in the middle sector because of those slow corners and Red Bull just having a slight edge probably through there. And maybe Red Bull having a slight edge with the obviously DRS activated down to, I think, turn 11, I think it is, the braking zone at the end of that DRS zone. But really, between Red Bull and Ferrari, there is nothing really separating them. I mean, half a tenth is nothing, really, in F1 terms. I mean, it can be crucial at times, but it's not that much time, really. But as you can see, Red Bull and Ferrari miles clear of every other team. The next best team, Mercedes, in third. Not necessarily a surprise they're quicker than Aston Martin just about, because Mercedes do tend to have a faster car down the straights, and I think that's why Mercedes are probably just about edging it ahead of Aston Martin. Alfa Romeo were surprisingly good in the middle sector. Obviously Ferrari powered, so maybe that did help their cause there. Haas F1, looking good as well, and obviously they are Ferrari powered too. Williams, I have to say, a bit surprising they weren't, say, a tenth and a half quicker, given that, you have that DRS zone. I would have expected, just a tad better performance from the Williams team in that part of the track. And then McLaren, you can see the 9th best team in the middle sector. Not really a surprise because of that DRS activation point, and obviously before the DRS is activated, you have, half a straight as well. So it is quite a long on-throttle section, so it's not a surprise McLaren are so slow in the middle sector. A tenth slower than Red Bull in the first sector, but then 5.5 tenths off in the middle sector. No real surprise McLaren drop off so much. Alpine, though, very surprising at their lack of pace in the middle sector in practice too. I would have expected them to be at least a tenth of a second quicker than what they showed. So, hopefully Alpine can find a bit more speed in that middle sector. And then AlphaTauri, no idea what they've done to their car, but in the middle sector, they are nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. Even a quarter of a second slower than the McLaren team, despite the McLaren car being a brick down the straights. But in the middle sector, Red Bull and Ferrari, the two best teams, and the Mercedes Aston Martin, the two best after that. And then in the midfield, it's very mixed up, very close between, Alfa Romeo, Haas, Williams, and then Alpine and McLaren there to a certain extent. And then the final sector, you have, one long back straight and then a slow hairpin-like corner, and then you're on throttle again until the start-finish line. Very simple final sector, and to be honest, the final sector is not that important because it is so simple, but Red Bull still just about quicker than the Ferrari team in that part of the track. Aston Martin 3rd, Mercedes 4th, Alpine doing a lot better in that final sector in 5th, and then Haas 6th, Williams 7th. Would have expected a bit better from Williams there, given how it's probably the most on-throttle part of the track out of the three sectors. So, expecting a bit more from Williams in that final sector. Not surprised McLaren are down there. Alfa Romeo, I would have expected to be maybe a tad better, and AlphaTauri probably a tad better as well. But overall for the lap, I would say the pecking order is, in terms of qualifying performance, it's Red Bull quickest, Ferrari second, Aston Martin third. Very close between them and Mercedes, I have to say, but Aston Martin third. Mercedes 4th, McLaren 5th, and then Alpine 6th with Haas and Williams probably battling for 7th and 8th, and then Alfa Romeo and AlphaTauri, the two slowest teams, with AlphaTauri being clearly the slowest team. So yeah, I think that's what the pecking order is for qualifying. McLaren, by the way, even though I think they are the 5th best team in quali trim, I think they are very much in the fight with Mercedes and Aston Martin today. And if Lando does produce an incredible lap, I think Lando could end up on the 3rd row of the grid. And obviously I'll get to my predictions in a moment as to where I think the top 10, or how I think the top 10 will shape up. And actually, let's just get straight to that right now. So this is my final prediction for qualifying. Red Bull, I think, will be on the front row. Perez will just about get ahead of Leclerc because I think Red Bull, again, are just a bit quicker over a single lap than I expected them to be around this track compared to the Ferrari team. So yeah, Verstappen on pole with Perez 2nd, just ahead of Leclerc in 3rd, with Sainz in 4th, and then Alonso 5th, Hamilton 6th, only just behind Alonso, with Norris only just behind on lap time, the Spaniard and fellow Brit of Hamilton. And Norris, I think, will out-qualify Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin and also the Mercedes of George Russell. And Lando, I think, definitely can line up for the race tomorrow in P7, which would be a really good position to be in, given how hard it is going to be, most likely to overtake around this track. I know the McLaren car is the slowest car in a straight line, but if he gets good enough exits before a straight where there's a DRS zone, he should be okay if of course, he can get a good qualifying result here, Lando. Lance Stroll, I think, will be 8th. He's not looked that quick, I have to say, Stroll, this weekend. Pierre Gasly, I think, will be 9th. Gasly was very quick here for AlphaTauri last year, and that's why I've got him still in the top 10. And you may say it's a bit ambitious for me to go Gasly ahead of Russell on the grid, but Russell, so far this weekend, hasn't had the greatest time and hasn't really talked up the Mercedes performance so far this weekend, and hasn't felt himself that comfortable in the car. And we saw last year he wasn't that quick in qualifying around this track as well. So I think he will end up in P10 for the Mercedes team, who are obviously desperately waiting for their new upgrade at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. So guys, in the live chat right now, let me know, who do you think will get pole position? Will it be a comfortable Verstappen pole position? Let me know in the chat. By the way, that super chat from Turbo I will get to in just a moment. I just want to do a quick poll in chat for who do you think will qualify P3 behind the Red Bulls in qualifying today in Miami. Because of course, I think we know that Red Bull are going to definitely get pole, most likely the front row. And the more interesting fight is, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and stuff like that. So I'll just quickly do the 4 options. And the 4 options I'm going to go for will be Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso, and Hamilton for the poll. So yeah, let me know in that poll over the next hour and 5 minutes I think we've got left until qualifying. So yeah, make sure to let me know how you think things will play out. Just want to say though, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because of course I've got plenty of content coming your way. Tomorrow I will be live at 6:30 p.m. UK time for the race watch-along. We'll be starting obviously with a race preview for a couple hours. Then the race starts at 8:30 p.m. And then of course I'll be doing a watch-along for that and taking you through that Grand Prix and then doing a reaction afterwards as well. So make sure to join me at 6:30 p.m. UK time tomorrow. And then if there is any talking points to go through, I will on Monday, either with a stream or a recorded video, do a little piece on whatever topic comes out of the Miami Grand Prix weekend. Hopefully there's something, but most likely I don't think there will be. But we'll see, of course, what does happen. And of course, don't forget to smash the like button. Of course, help the channel grow, does help the channel grow, and would be great if you could do so. But there you go. Hour and 5 minutes to go until qualifying. And let me just quickly read out this super chat from Turbo B1. Is it B18C1? I think it is. Who says, thank you, Chazzy, for continuing to do these live, or these free practice sectors and speed trap breakdowns. Also, your thoughts on the Aston Martin Honda rumours. I think there is absolutely traction for those rumours, and I think it's actually something Aston Martin should pursue. Because at the minute, Mercedes struggling with their power unit. It's reliable, but it is not very powerful compared to the Ferrari one, or the basically the Honda powered one that's in the Red Bull and the AlphaTauri, and not even as powerful as the Renault in the Alpine. So yeah, I think it's something worth pursuing. Whether they will actually go for it though, we'll see. Yeah, it's a tricky decision for Aston Martin. I think if I was them, I would probably stick with Mercedes, because they're probably the safer bet than Honda. Because Honda, they're a bit inconsistent with, if you look at the eras of Formula One, where, when they're successful and when they're not, it just really goes up, down quite a bit. And with Mercedes, I think you can expect a bit more consistency. But I think it's definitely worth looking at other options for Aston Martin, given Mercedes' current lack of performance. But yeah, I think if I was Aston Martin, I would stick with what they've got. Right. I think, though, we'll just get cracking and get straight into these teams and get into a more in-depth way how what do you call it? We'll get into how I think these teams will truly get on and the drivers will get on in qualifying. Just want to say as well, we are currently on 23 likes. Let's try and get up to 30, 40 likes or something like that if we can before qualifying begins in just over an hour's time. That would be great if we could do that. But yeah, let's get into it. And we will, of course, start with the Red Bull team. And yeah, I was hoping this weekend we would have, after what we saw in Baku, a close fight for pole with Red Bull and Ferrari. Close-ish to make us a bit excited. And I think we had absolutely good reason to believe that that would be a possibility for this, Miami Grand Prix. But yeah, so far in practice, Max Verstappen in that car has looked in a class of his own. He looks way too quick. He has 2 or 3 tenths of a second in his pocket over the rest. And when Max is in this mood, I just don't see how anybody can stop him when he's in this mood, unless you do have legitimately a faster car. And of course, nobody does. So yeah, Max Verstappen, I think, will be pretty comfortably on pole position. He would have been comfortably on pole position for this race, of course, last year, if he didn't make a mistake at the very end of Q3. And then, of course, went on to produce a brilliant win where he overtook both Ferraris within, I think, the first 10 laps it was. And, comfortably won the Miami Grand Prix. So, yeah, I think Verstappen is unbeatable today and really this weekend. Sergio Perez, though, if he does truly believe that he can fight for the championship, even though I don't think he can, then yeah, despite not the greatest weekend for him so far, he has got to make sure he produces everything he can to get on that front row, because it hasn't been the greatest weekend for him. Both Ferrari drivers are looking pretty quick and are, so far this weekend, by the looks of it, getting the best out of the Ferrari package. So he can't just, Perez, rely on the Red Bull car being, miles quicker than the Ferrari. So yeah, Perez has got to make sure he's on his A game, because if he's not, he'll end up third or even fourth on the grid, and then he'll have extra work to do on Sunday in clearing those Ferrari cars, which he will probably do anyway, even if he was to start in fourth. But yeah, he doesn't, of course, if he wants to fight for the championship, that is something he absolutely cannot allow to happen. But yeah, Verstappen will absolutely get pole. There is no doubt about that. I would be amazed if anybody else than him got pole position. For the Ferrari team, just like they were in Baku, they are one of the two quickest teams here in qualifying. Maybe not for the race. I've seen some of the data for the race runs that were done in practice too, and yeah, really bad reading if you're a Ferrari fan. But in terms of qualifying, it looks good. They don't look as good as they were in Baku. I don't think they're going to be quite quick enough to fight for pole position, but should be good enough to at least lock out the second row of the grid. And if they do have really bad performance with in the race, which is a lot of the time what Ferrari do have, and they're really killing their tyres in what is a very hot Miami weekend, at least if they do qualify third and fourth, they'll have the track position to then hold back the rest. Because even with DRS, which of course the DRS zones for this weekend have been shortened, the Aston Martin and Mercedes teams are not going to be able really to overtake that Ferrari down a straight this weekend, unless the Ferrari destroys its tyres so much that they're losing 2-3 seconds a lap, which, I mean, might actually happen. We have seen that in the past with Ferrari, that they can kill their tyres really bad and end up miles off the pace. But in respect to the Ferrari team, yeah, at least a second row lockout I think would be a positive result, given where everyone is right now with their performance. If they can get a car onto the front row, though, that'd be great. And if Perez is struggling, then yes, second and third would be, I think, a very good result for both Ferrari cars. And if Perez is struggling in the race to overtake because of how hard it is to overtake here, then obviously it is only it's even better for the Ferrari team to claw their way back in the championship in their fight for second, really, with Aston Martin and Mercedes. They are 25 points Ferrari behind Aston Martin, remember, in the championship. Aston Martin, of course, being second. So they need another weekend where they score, 20, 25 points to really get back into things even more than they were, back in Australia, where they looked in the championship after that race, they looked like they were already just way too far behind, but they have thankfully started to roar into life in these last couple weekends. But yeah, Ferrari definitely second best team, but I think third and fourth it will be for them, because I think Red Bull are just too quick for them, and Perez, I think, will do enough to end up on the front row. But it will be very close with Leclerc and Perez. That'll be a good fight to watch in the fight for, really, second on the grid. And maybe Carlos Sainz will be in that fight as well. But let's now go on to a fight a bit further behind, which is Mercedes versus Aston Martin for best of the rest after the top two teams, really. And of course, we'll start with the Mercedes team. Mercedes, started the weekend well, but then in practice too, all fell apart. And they, if you look at their comments from practice too, they don't have any real confidence going into Going into qualifying, or really the race weekend in general, do the Mercedes team. And you can't blame them. If you go and look again back at the data I went through earlier in this stream, Mercedes are not quick. In the first sector, they're surprisingly slow, where you would expect them to be fast. Middle sector, they're decent. I mean, they're ahead of Aston Martin, but not by that much. And then in the final sector, they're slightly slower, but it's just not obviously what Mercedes would have wanted for this weekend. And just one more weekend, really, for them to live through this pain before they can really get their season going, hopefully, at Imola with their new upgrades that we really hope make some difference, even if it improves their car by 2 or 3 tenths of a second. That would be something going forward for the future. And I just don't, I don't just mean, sorry, the rest of 2023, obviously, I mean, going into 2024 and beyond. But, yeah, from what I've seen so far, Aston Martin are quicker. Not by much, only by maybe a tenth at most. It's going to be a very close fight, and it's going to be a good fight between those two teams. They've been very close to each other, really, all season of those two teams. But I think Alonso will be fifth on the grid ahead of Lewis Hamilton, because the Aston Martin will just be a tad too quick. And Alonso has been pretty good this weekend in the Aston Martin. Again, both Mercedes drivers not having really that great a time in the car. So, yeah, sixth, I think it'll be for Hamilton. And the reason I've gone for Russell in P10 as part of my prediction is, again, because he did struggle here last year for pace. I know he finished in 5th place ahead of Hamilton, but that was because of a very well-timed safety car that saved his race, because he was not on the same pace as Hamilton at all in qualifying or the race, and got very lucky with that safety car coming out when it did. And yeah, in practice too, looked, I think, was it 2 or 3 tenths off Hamilton, and just didn't look very confident with the car at all, and even said he just didn't quite like what he was feeling out on the track. So yeah, I think Russell is going to struggle today, and I've gone for him in P10. I don't think he'll get knocked out in Q2 for the second race in a row. I wouldn't be surprised if he got knocked out in Q2, to be honest, because Mercedes are struggling. But I think he will make it through to the top 10, because I don't think the competition is necessarily stiff for a top 10 slot, fighting against Russell. So yeah, I think he will just about make it, but end up with a pretty poor grid position for the race. And yeah, the better team so far this weekend looks to be just about the Aston Martin team. And in the first sector, Aston Martin are a tenth probably at most quicker, which again is surprising, because normally the Mercedes car is quicker in faster corners, with the Aston Martin being quicker in slower corners. But yeah, in the first sector, Mercedes are about a tenth almost behind. Middle sector, Mercedes are quicker, but it's pretty much equal. And then in the final sector, Aston Martin a tad quicker by 0.02 of a second. So even if Aston Martin do prove to be quicker in qualifying today, which is my prediction, it will not be by very much. It'll be very fine margins between Alonso, Hamilton, and maybe even Stroll, Russell as well, in that fight with Aston Martin and Mercedes. And given the pace of McLaren and Lando Norris, it's going to be an interesting, say, back half of the top 10, and quite mixed positions, which I hope will make for some sort of interesting stuff in tomorrow's race, because yeah, I'm expecting a procession really around the streets of Miami. But yeah, Alonso, if Alonso is going to get a podium this weekend, really, he can't be any worse than 5th on the grid. If he can get 4th, that would be great, but I just don't see how Aston Martin can get near the Ferraris. I just don't see it. Ferrari have just got way too much pace for them. They're quite a bit faster down the straights and seem to have, around this track, similar grip. So, yeah, I think that's probably a bit too much to expect from Fernando. But, yeah, I think Alonso will be P5 and Lance Stroll, I'm going to go in P8, a couple tenths of a second away from, from Alonso. The reason I've gone for him in 8th behind Norris is because Lando has been super quick this weekend. And in a similar way to what happened in Baku, I think Lando's very good speed and Lando's very good speed and Lance, and maybe not quite being on the sort of pace you would want, will cause that result to happen. And I do expect it from P5 down to P10 to be pretty close. If I'm expecting it to be separated by 2, 3, maybe 4 tenths of a second at most in those positions. So yeah, look to there for a bit of a closer fight this weekend. But Aston Martin, I mean, maybe they're not looking as quick as they were back in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, but they still look like they're going to have a decent weekend. And if it plays out how I think it will, I think they will most likely come away with second still in the championship from this Grand Prix before the race at Imola in 2 weeks, where I think they will be bringing I think they're bringing some new upgrades, proper upgrades to really start improving this car. So yeah, we'll watch out for that at Aston Martin, and we'll see if they can, close the gap to Red Bull by a couple tenths of a second or so. But what I'll do, as we've got 48 or 49 minutes to go until qualifying begins here in Miami, I'm going to just quickly whiz through the rest of the teams, and then I'll get to your comments in chat, because of course I know you guys are posting comments like mad, and you've got plenty to say. Don't worry, you will have your views aired very soon, and make sure to keep posting your comments and let me know what you think is going to happen in this session if you have not already. And yeah, we'll go next on to Alpine, who in practice 3 were 5th and 6th, but I'm not quite sure that that's going to be able to be replicated this weekend. From what we've seen, and I know Baku was a bad weekend for them, but from what I've seen here as well, Alpine look like they've definitely dropped behind McLaren. McLaren look like they've definitely got, at this point of the season, a faster car. Whether that will continue for the rest of the season, who knows? I expect it to ebb and flow at times between those two teams, who of course were so close to one another last season. But yeah, Alpine, I think the best really you could see for them is them getting one car into the top 10. I would be amazed if they got both cars in. I really, really would. It would require one of the big drivers from Aston Martin or Mercedes or even Norris falling out in Q2 or Q1, which would be something quite spectacular. And I just don't see that happening. So yeah, only one Alpine I think will get into Q3. Pierre Gasly is my favourite to be ahead of Ocon, because Gasly was super quick here last year for AlphaTauri. P7 he was on the grid and was actually running in 7th place until Fernando Alonso punted him up the back in turn 1 and caused a puncture, which then led to a clumsy crash with Lando Norris later on around the track. So yeah, watch out for Gasly. I think if he really gets hooked up well in qualifying, I think he could produce a pretty good lap in the session coming up soon in just over 45 minutes. But in terms of Alpine versus McLaren, I think it's purely aerodynamics is the difference between the two teams. I think when it comes to outright power and high speed, or not high speed corners, but yeah, just outright power and straight line speed, I think Alpine are still not massively ahead of McLaren, but are comfortably ahead by a tenth or two in that aspect of the McLaren team. But when it comes to the corners, especially the high-speed corners we've seen this weekend, that McLaren car is really in a different league at the moment compared to Alpine. You saw in the first sector in practice 2, McLaren were quarter of a second quicker than Alpine. And even in Baku, I know they had their struggles, but McLaren there were much quicker than Alpine in the first sector. So McLaren have got superior grip. Alpine have got superior straight line speed, but I think as the season goes on, if McLaren can deliver the maximum of their potential with what they've got at the minute, I think McLaren, as the season goes on, will probably just pull away from the Alpine team. So, yeah, it's really disappointing, I have to say, the start that Alpine have had to the season. They've just not delivered with what is actually a pretty decent car. And we've seen a couple times this season it's been able to fight with Mercedes, Aston Martin, to a certain extent, even Ferrari. But yeah, they just haven't delivered the results they should have, and now they're in a position where they're not even on double-figure points yet after 4 races, when they should be easily, on that, on double-figure points, and should be easily in 5th place in the championship at the minute. But they're, 6th and only a point ahead of Haas F1 in the championship, even though Alpine are pretty comfortably quicker than Haas with their car. So, yeah, it's just been such a disappointing start to the season for Alpine. As I said before, their driver lineup doesn't help. They've got 2 midfield drivers in their car. They haven't got a real star at Alpine. They haven't got, what they had last season with Alonso, who would get truly the best out of the package they had. I mean, Ocon last season did at a few races, but consistently Alonso got the best out of that Alpine car. But that, is not something Alpine can have this season. And it's all their own fault for obviously not signing the correct drivers up for 2023 and beyond. But yeah, disappointing start to the season for Alpine. I don't expect it to get much better in Miami. For McLaren, yeah, best of the rest, I think they are. Like I said, I think they've got superior downforce to the Alpine team. I don't think they're miles better in that aspect, but I think they're definitely better by a quarter of a second, 0.3 of a second, maybe the absolute maximum. They're better in that area. And thankfully, they're not losing maybe as much time as I expected down the straights this weekend. I mean, they're still losing quite a bit of time, and it is still costing them to a certain extent. But yeah, they look to be pretty quick. Obviously, in practice 3, I know they were 18th and 19th, but I really don't think that is representative of what they can do. I think you'll see much better from them in qualifying. But yeah, Lando Norris, watch out for him. I think he will be the real star of the midfield. He's been very quick all weekend. Oscar Piastri, I would not expect that much from him at all. As long as Oscar can be, 3.5, maybe 0.4 of a second off at most, given that he's never raced here before, you do have to give him that, give him a pass a bit, in regards to how far off he should be, with Lando Norris this weekend. If he can be 3 to 0.4 off his teammate, then he should end up probably not in Q3, but in maybe 12th, 13th place, which wouldn't be the worst grid position to have, because McLaren should have a decently quick car in the race compared to the other midfield runners. So, yeah, that would be a decent grid position for Piastri. But Lando Norris is the man to look out for McLaren. And, yeah, he should have a good session coming up in just over 40 minutes' time. And I have to say again, I cannot wait to see McLaren at a track where there are no straights, really, and where straight line speed doesn't matter really at all, such as Monaco coming up in 3 weeks' time. Because I think McLaren at that track are going to cause some, maybe not massive shock waves, but shock waves to a certain extent. Because I think, at the minute, they have a car that handles, at worst, just as well as the Aston Martin and the Mercedes car, if not better. The real reason they're slower than those two teams at the minute is because they don't have the power and the or not, maybe in comparison to those teams, obviously they do have the same power, but you get what I mean. They don't have the straight line speed to truly keep up with those teams. But if they did and had a few extra kilometers an hour speed, McLaren would be right there in quali, race pace, whatever you want to call it. So McLaren are not that far away from being a front-running team in Formula 1. They just need to shave off another third of a second, and I reckon they'll be there. But of course, it depends on how Aston Martin, Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, how they improve in the next few months, because McLaren, they will bring some small upgrades in the next few races, but their next big upgrade will be at the Hungarian Grand Prix, which is in the latter part of July. And that upgrade has been talked about as a B-spec car. So obviously that'll be massive for them. But it might be a bit too late for them to really compete with Aston Martin, Mercedes, Ferrari, or even Red Bull later in the season. So, yeah, watch out for McLaren. Maybe, at certain tracks, they might cause a real surprise. And if their upgrades deliver to their maximum potential, of course, their wind tunnel, I think, is... not sure if it is quite online yet, but it is very close to being. Yeah, this team definitely going in a more positive direction now in 2023. For Alfa Romeo, not looking as bad as I thought. I thought they would be the worst team this weekend, but that is not the case. They look to be quicker than AlphaTauri, which is a surprise, and were 13th and 14th practice 2, which is decent, I would say, for them. But yeah, they are still one of the two slowest teams on the grid. And I'm not expecting really that much from them. I think the best they can hope for is one car to get into Q2 and a car eliminated in Q1. I think that's, the maximum potential I can see from the Alfa Romeo team. I'd be very surprised if they were both comfortably into Q2. That would be quite something. And would be obviously a massive improvement in what we've seen in the last couple of races from the Alfa Romeo team. But yeah, they look better, but they're still not very good at all. Haas F1 have been disappointing for me. I thought they would be a bit quicker with their car in quali trim, but they just haven't been that great. McLaren and Alpine look to be definitely quicker than them. And really, over a single lap, they look to be fighting Williams for the 7th best team award, I guess you could say, for this weekend, which is not great, is it? Considering, back in Melbourne a month ago, they were say on pace pretty much with McLaren. I mean, I'd say quicker than McLaren over a single lap at least. So yeah, quite a drop off from Haas in the last month. They have had a new floor pot on the car, which I'm not sure if it's the exact same one as the Ferrari floor, which, by the way, for you Ferrari fans out there, it has been reported that Ferrari's new floor has not delivered what they expected. Ferrari have refuted these claims and claimed that in practice 3 they did some more testing with the floor. But yeah, if those reports are true, obviously not looking great, and if it is true with Haas, they are using a similar new floor, of course not good for them. Because they were obviously fighting with Alpine and McLaren to a certain extent not too long ago. But yeah, now fighting with Williams for the 7th best team award here in Miami, at least on qualifying pace. I think they will probably end up getting both cars into Q2, but yeah, Q3 I don't think is really possible, especially when you consider that the top 4 teams really should get all of their cars into Q3. So really there's only 2 positions up for grabs. And I don't think Haas are as quick as McLaren and Alpine. So yeah, Q2 and a decent result in Q2. Say a 12th, 13th, something like that, I think is realistically the best they can hope for the Haas team, which is disappointing, of course, because this is the first of 3 home races for the American team. AlphaTauri are absolute shit. They have the worst car this weekend. Yuki Tsunoda, I think, is doing okay. But yeah, AlphaTauri are dead slow. There's no pace here. And I expect them to be getting definitely De Vries knocked out in Q1. Hopefully not Tsunoda, because he's been so good this season, but probably Tsunoda will fall victim in Q1 as well. And finally, the Williams team, who look about as quick as I thought, but in certain parts of the track are surprisingly quick in certain parts, but surprisingly slower in others. Again, in the final sector, not quite as quick as I thought they would be, given how high speed it is. And then in the first sector, which I thought would be their weakest point, they are pretty quick. So yeah, I don't quite understand why that is, and whether, or if that does replicate itself in qualifying. Again, it's a bit of a mystery to me, but yeah, overall, Williams seem to be as quick as I thought they were going to be for this weekend's race. I think realistically, Albon, kind of like I was saying with Haas, I think the best really he can hope for is a 12th, 13th, something like that. I don't think Williams have the downforce to fight with McLaren and Alpine. I think they're just a bit too good in that area for Albon to be in the top 10. But I think he could, 12th or 13th, I think is definitely a possibility. For Logan Sargent, don't expect too much from him. He's never raced here before. I know it's his home race and his first ever home race, but yeah, he's never raced here before. So don't expect too much from him. He is very likely to get knocked out in Q1. I'd be very surprised if he made it into Q2, to be honest. But yeah, overall, Williams look decent and hopefully get a decent grid position for the race on Sunday, which they can maybe turn into a points finish to try and move off the bottom of the championship. We'll go back to these pictures, and we have just over half an hour to go, guys, until qualifying begins in Miami. I can see we're on 47 likes. Let's try and go over 50 likes if we can before qualifying begins, and let's try and get up towards 60 or 70 likes if we can before the session gets underway. And again, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, because of course I do qualifying and race watch-alongs for all of the races. But what do you call it? Tomorrow I will be doing a race watch-along for the Miami Grand Prix, going live 2 hours before the race starts at 6:30 p.m. UK time. The build-up, then the race starts at 8:30, and then of course I'll be sticking around for probably 30-40 minutes at least for a reaction to the session itself. So yeah, make sure to come along to that tomorrow, and if there is anything to talk about on Monday, then I'll upload a video or do a stream on Monday evening. And yeah, make sure to keep smashing that like button and vote in that poll at the top of the live chat. Who do you think will finish P3 in qualifying behind the 2 Red Bulls? Or who do you think's most likely to if the 2 Red Bulls are on the front row? Let me know in the live chat poll. And I think what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to post a link of the stream out again a couple more times, and then I'll get into your comments in the chat. And just a reminder, unfortunately, despite his best efforts, Niblo, my co-commentator that I had from the Azerbaijan Grand Prix race watch-along, will not be able to join me tomorrow because, he just can't find a good enough solution, I guess, to be able to join me for tomorrow. So, yeah, he will maybe be in the chat, I'm not sure, but, he will not be joining me on stream, but will, of course, be back for the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola in 2 weeks' time. And then we'll be on a lot more after that for the European season. As I can see on the Sky F1 broadcast, they're looking at a comparison of Verstappen and Leclerc's laps. Obviously, Max 0.4 of a second quicker in practice 3. Anyway, let me post up the stream link again. Come join us here to Watchalong qualifying in Miami. And another thing I want to say is if you did enjoy my F2 watch-alongs and F2 content, that will also be coming back for the next race at Imola. Because, of course, the timings are a bit better for me in terms of watching those races, whether it's the sprint race or the feature race. So, yeah, that's what I will be bringing back for Imola. And then, yeah, once we get properly into the European season, it'll be a regular thing on the channel. Come join us here to watch along qualifying at the Miami GP. I have to say, the scheduling is not great for qualifying today in terms of the local crowd. Because at the minute, and I think it has actually just kicked off, what do you call it? The Miami Heat are playing the New York Knicks in Game 3 of the NBA Eastern Conference semifinals, I think it is. So obviously, people in Miami are going to be paying attention to that rather than qualifying, because that'll be going on for like 2.5, 3 hours. So yeah, it's not great scheduling wise. Really, they should have scheduled qualifying earlier in the day. Of course, though, the timings are released quite a few months, ago. They were released, so they couldn't really have foreseen that. But yeah, it's not going to be great viewership wise. The Liberty Media, of course, we know that's all they give a fuck about is viewership and whether they can bring new viewers in, but they won't be bringing in a ton of viewers in Miami or America really today. But anyway, for the next 25 minutes, say, I'm going to go through the chat and read out your comments and see how you're all doing and see what you guys think will happen in this session coming up, which again should be really the highlight of the weekend. Great to see you all. And by the way, thanks Crystal Racing, saying congratulations to Chelsea. Yes, we won a football match. I couldn't believe it when I saw it. 2 months it is since we won a match, and we actually won one today. So yeah, very happy about that. As well, best wishes to Opulence, who says, good afternoon, you amazing people. Hope you're having a great day. And then goes on to say, I am at the race, but will listen to Chazza. Yeah, really hope you have a great time in the baking heat. And yeah, hope it's all good. Let's find some other comments here if I can. In the chat, Turbo saying Mercedes first row lockout guaranteed. Smart money bet. Yeah, it would have been a smart money bet 2 years ago, but obviously not now. Mechanical grip important in Sector 2. Then Crystal Racing, yeah, very true. And that does show itself in terms of who has good mechanical grip in that middle sector. Normally you would think Aston Martin would show well there, but yeah, they weren't very good, I have to say, in the middle sector in practice 2 yesterday. McLaren F1 races, I think Alonso will be third on the grid. I would be surprised by that, but it would be great to see. I think would probably spice the race up tomorrow a bit more. McLaren also says, evening Shazza. To be honest, I don't think any of the Mercs will be closer than 1 second in Q3 if they both scrape through Q2. And yeah, that's something to obviously look out for, because I don't think it's a guarantee that Mercedes with both cars do get into Q3. Opulence gives their prediction for qualifying. Perez on pole from Max And then Sainz, Alonso, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Russell, Gasly, and Stroll. Interesting top 10. McLaren from Racing saying in the chat, I reckon Elon will buy AlphaTauri, SpaceX, F1, anybody? Of course, with him saying that, I need to let you guys know, if you haven't been watching the coverage today, that Elon Musk is at the race. Of course, the what's his official role at Twitter? CEO, and then obviously the person running Tesla, SpaceX, all that stuff. And obviously we hear about the guy all the time, and I use obviously the website he runs quite a lot. And also Jeff Bezos is at the race as well, and obviously he is the boss of Amazon. Still, I think he is, unless he has resigned. Maybe he did a year or so ago, I can't remember, but that's pretty much why he is as rich as he is. But yeah, those two at the race. I think Jeff was on the McLaren pit wall, and yeah, Elon has been in the Red Bull garage, which no real surprise because he wants to make himself look good by hanging out with the champions. Turbo says, who would have thought McLaren and Renault would become Formula 1.5? They both seem forever stuck. Yeah, I mean, if you said to me 10 years ago McLaren would be, you know, consistently a midfield team, I would have said absolutely no way. But obviously that has been the case. There has been, you know, times in the past where McLaren have, you know, been a midfield team, but not for anywhere near as long as this. And for Renault / Alpine now, obviously their project, which they spent a ridiculous amount of money on to try and become a front-running team, has failed. They've won, one race since they came back in as a works team pretty much in 2016. Obviously that win with Ocon in Hungary in 2021, and that was really mostly down to luck, I think we have to say. He did very well to hang on, of course, to victory, but yeah, was very lucky that he walked into that position. But I do hope that one of those teams can progress forward and join Mercedes, Aston Martin, Ferrari in that part of the field. I think McLaren, though, at the minute are looking more likely to do that because, yeah, they are... they seem like they're going to be improving the most out of those two teams this season. Crystal Racing's prediction is a routine result. Red Bull 1-2, Leclerc 3rd, Alonso 4th, Hamilton 5th, Sainz in 6th. I'd be surprised if he was that bad. Hello to Anders Eriksson. Great to see you, mate. Lav Gorilla, good to see you as well. Who says, evening kids, just listening to Chaz. I can't be bothered to watch anything as the season is over for me. Ricardo Watchman says top 3 for him. Max, Leclerc, Perez. Definitely a likely top 3, but I think Perez obviously will edge out the Monegasque driver. Ronan in chat says hi Chazza, I think you were trying to say, instead of hi Chaka. Really enjoyed listening to your rant last night about F1 at the moment. Yeah. If you guys haven't heard my rant about F1, obviously after this stream finishes, you can go and listen to it. The link to that stream is in the description. And really, the first hour is dedicated to just ranting about the state of F1 at the minute, which I still feel the same way. We're not in a good place right now, and I don't think things are really going to get that much better. The only thing that can make things better, really, is if the field gets a lot closer. But if it doesn't, then it's going to be really hard to find some excitement in rest of the season, but also next season as well. But yeah, I think a lot of the things I said in that stream absolutely ring true. But again, if you want to hear what I had to say in that stream, link below in the description. And yeah, try and watch that if you want after the qualifying session finishes, and let me know whether you agree or disagree or not. Let's find some other comments here if I can. McLaren F1 races. I understand why they brought in the cost cap. Look at how much improvement Haas and Williams have made with the same money. But wow, the innovations and performance found pre-cost cap was nuts. I mean, yeah, by this point of the season, I mean, you can already see it happening, to be honest, that the top 4 teams are pulling away from the midfield at, quite a fast rate of knots. Of course, though, once we get to, say, mid-season, which is around the British and Austrian Grand Prix, that is when, from that point of the season onwards, it will start to close up again. But, yeah, I do like, despite all the bashing I gave Formula 1 last night, the cost cap and the aero testing regulations, where the lower down on the championship you are, the more time you get in the wind tunnel, and obviously they decide who gets more time based on every 6 months. I really like that. I really like it. I wish we had it 10 years ago. It would have really made the start, especially of the V6 hybrid era, very, very, maybe not very, very exciting, but a lot better, and would have really helped, I think, going forward. Obviously, it was cost cap has been talked about itself for a while in terms of being introduced into Formula 1. But, yeah, I really like that. I think it's really great for Formula 1. It doesn't create, a field where basically all the cars are the same, but it doesn't let the top teams get too far away from the cars behind. And I think when we get to the second half of the season, you'll see things progressively start to close up. I mean, Red Bull, they are mentally quick right now, but remember, after the British Grand Prix, or their home race in Austria in the early part of July, they're not really going to be able to bring that many upgrades, if any, because of the further reduction to their wind tunnel time they received, obviously for their budget cap infraction last year. Let's find some other comments here if I can. Someone's saying in chat, that wanker that stole a company from the founder and takes all the credit for Tesla. Yeah, I've seen a video on that about how, Elon Musk just takes the credit for something that he just isn't responsible for. But there's lots of people that do that, so, he's not exactly unique in that aspect. Ashwin says, hey Chaz, your prediction on best of the rest in quali, Alpine or McLaren? I think McLaren. It will still be close, but I think McLaren have got probably a 10th, maybe 2/10 in their pocket over the French team. Ashwin saying Aston Martin wants that Honda engine, apparently. Like I said earlier, I think it's definitely something worth considering, but I think most likely, what do you call it? Yeah, most likely, I think the best decision would be to to stay with Mercedes, because I think they're a bit more reliable of a manufacturer. Not in terms of just actual reliability of the engine, but I think in terms of performance, I think Mercedes are a bit more reliable to stick with. Turbo says, yeah, I wonder if Red Bull can continue winning championships without Honda and having to use their own designed and built engine. Well, of course, they won't be doing that starting in 2026, because they will be powered by Ford, which I cannot wait to see how that goes down. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how that works out with Ford, because of course Ford, they have not been in Formula 1, really. I mean, obviously we had the Cosworth V10. Was it a Cosworth V10? Yeah, we had the Cosworth V10 for a year, and then from 2006 to 2013, we had the Cosworth V8. But it wasn't really Ford. It was basically just engines that were that were at times kept over from the past, but also, you know, different divisions to the actual Ford division, I guess you could call it. And the last time Ford were properly in Formula One as an engine manufacturer was 2004, which by 2026 will be 22 years ago. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how Ford get on. Because, if they turn up and they're not ready, and the power unit is a load of shit like the Renault was in 2014, then Red Bull are not going to be happy at all. Ashwin says, "Hey Chazzo, is it me or Miami? Seems like a close fight between Merc and Aston Martin than Aston Martin and Ferrari." Yeah, it has seemed like that this weekend, which is a shame. It would be better if we had Ferrari, Aston, and Mercedes pretty much on the same pace. But yeah, that's how it looks this weekend. Turbo says, "What I read is the engine will be Red Bull designed and manufactured, and Ford is only doing the hybrid system." Yeah, I think. Let me just actually quickly check, because we've still got a bit of time until qualifying. Just under 15 minutes time. I think I saw something like that. Let me just see to confirm. Because obviously Red Bull have a powertrain division. Let me just quickly look on this Race Fans article. Of course, in 2026, the MGUH will disappear, and the power unit for 2026 will require sustainable fuels, and that will increase the power of the MGUK. And yeah, Ford, it says, will not develop the entire 2026 motor single-handedly, but will provide technical expertise in all areas where it can add value. So yeah, it's I guess a 50-50 relationship, but Ford will still be absolutely crucial in that, in how Red Bull perform from 2026 on. There is no doubt about that. And yeah, from 2026 on, I think really we're heading for 2014 Part 2 in terms of the reset that we got back then with the V6 hybrids being brought in, as we've had, ever since 2014. And the current power units we've got, they're not really different at all from what we had in 2014. But of course, over time, have been continuously made better and better, more reliable, more powerful. Now they're insanely powerful compared to how they were in 2014. And obviously, they're a big reason as to why these cars are so quick. But, yeah, in 2026, I think you'll see a similar thing to what we saw in 2014, where compared to 2013, a lot of teams who were front-running teams just completely fell off the face of the earth, like Lotus, because of the engine they had being terrible. Certain teams, dropped back a bit, but not maybe as much as Lotus. Certain teams jumped up the field massively. Mercedes, obviously, Williams, Force India to a certain extent. So, yeah, I think that's what we'll see in 2026. And of course, we've got Ford coming. Honda probably, I think, are going to be powering somebody. Of course, we'll see who. I think McLaren, it's even been rumoured, having talks with Honda about a possible partnership. Let's hope that goes better than the second time they had a partnership. Obviously, a few years ago. And then obviously Audi coming into F1. Cannot wait to see what happens with that. With obviously them progressively taking over the Alfa Romeo team, and then it will be the Audi Works team from 2026 on. And yeah, should be very exciting to see how Audi get on for the first ever time in Formula One. Turbo says, what I dislike about the 2026 regs is engine power being reduced and hybrid power being increased to get to that same 1k level. Should leave the engine power the same and crank up the hybrid power with another 200 horsepower. Maybe it would be enough power to overcome the drag, and we could eliminate DRS. Yeah, I will admit I'm not really that intelligent at all when it comes to the the technical side of F1, especially the power units and that. But I mean, we've had these power units for so long now, almost 10 years, and everyone's got used to them. As long as they don't make things much worse and much more boring, I think it'll be a good thing for Formula One to progress in that area technologically wise. And I mean, I've said in the past that I don't like regulation changes happening all the time, once every year or once every 2 years. But I don't mind once every 4 or 5 years having a new set of regulations just to freshen things up and also to advance the sport. I think that's absolutely fine to have, a new set of regs, say, once every 5 years maximum. I have no problem with that. And that's why I hope the regulations will stay the same for this year, next year, and the year after. And hopefully, the things that are bad about F1, in my view now, will be taken on board, and those changes to make those things better will be implemented in 2026. Because that would be a better way of doing it, rather than just rushing through changes for next season and then they end up not working. Bit like when Liberty Media rushed through changes to the front and rear wing and bargeboard area for 2019, try and eliminate some dirty air, but actually did nothing to the cars. And the cars were, unaffected really by those new regulations. So that's what I hope for the future. Ashwin says, hi Jazza, do you have hope that Audi coming into F1 will be a good thing for the sport? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great thing for the sport. Should have happened years ago, but yeah, it's going to be great. And also, and is it possible that Porsche can buy Williams and be a customer car with Audi? Yeah, it's possible. I mean, it's up to Williams, though, whether they will actually want to do that. Personally, I think Williams should do that, because I don't think Williams are going to be going anywhere anytime soon. I know Williams this season, they look a bit better than they did last season. And, they might be last in the championship at the minute, but they're definitely, I don't think, going to finish there and will have a decent season. But if Williams want to rise again, and that team at that base wants to become something again, I think they've got to just drop the pride and let Porsche do their thing. Because there's actually one big reason why Williams' partnership with BMW 20 years ago failed, is because BMW wanted to take more control of Williams to help get the team a championship, and Frank Williams obviously would not have it. And that was the beginning of the end. Because once BMW left, they took over Sauber, very nearly got them a championship. Obviously, they then failed in 2009 and then left F1 with their tails between their legs. But yeah, I think Williams should drop the pride and just let Porsche have the team, or have at least majority control. Maybe not necessarily 100% control of Williams. Anyway, we have got just over 5 minutes, guys, until qualifying begins in Miami. So, let me just end the poll in chat. 225 votes, I think we've had. No, 235, actually. Thank you guys for voting, of course. I asked you guys, who do you think will qualify P3 behind the Red Bulls in qualifying today in Miami? Of course, that is assuming that the front row is locked out by the two Red Bulls. And you guys went for Charles Leclerc, most likely, in P1 in this vote. 51% of the vote he got, with Alonso second on 20%, Hamilton third on 19%, and Carlos Sainz fourth on 8% of the vote. And yeah, I agree with you guys. I think it will be Charles Leclerc who will be at the absolute worst in the top 3. But I think Leclerc, coming into this session, realistically thinks he probably could get second. But yeah, even third wouldn't be the worst result in the world for the Ferrari team. And for Leclerc, who of course was on pole position here last year. Ferrari actually locked out the front row at this race last year, as the F1 intro is now playing. And yeah, we're not very far away now. Just wanted to let you guys know as well, in terms of the tyres this weekend, we have the C4, C3 and C2 compounds. So if I remember correctly, I think yeah, there's like I think from the C4 to the C3 compound, there's a half a second difference. And then from the C3 to the C2 compound, there is a 1 to 1.2 second difference in lap time. So for tomorrow's race, that is something to keep your eyes on with the difference in lap time there. Of course, the C2 compound will be very durable, but won't necessarily have great speed to start with. But yeah, qualifying getting underway very shortly in Miami. Of course, I'll get my watch-along screen up very soon. And if you've got some final predictions, final things you want to say in chat, make sure to post it quickly before we get into the session. And yeah, like I said, I'm very pessimistic for this race weekend. And I think this will probably be today the highlight of the weekend, because if the race is bone dry tomorrow, I can't see much happening. I hope I'm wrong though. And yeah, confirmation, C4, C3 and C2 compounds, which of course will all get used in qualifying at Imola, where we get that stupid format being trialled, where in Q1 everyone will have to use the hard tyre, in Q2 everyone will have to use the medium, and in Q3 everyone will have to use the soft. Again, stupid format. Another big reason why F1 is the way it is, and I really hope it fails and just falls flat on its face. And to be honest, I'll let you guys know when we get to Imola, but I think there is a decent chance I might not actually cover qualifying at Imola, just because of how annoyingly stupid that rule is, and the, you know, it being trialed is just something I'm not sure I can put up with in a couple of weeks from now, but we'll see. Of course, I'll let you guys know what my plan is for Imola. As grandstands look a lot more packed than they did yesterday, but there are still some empty seats in there. It's definitely not as packed as it was last year. And yeah, yesterday on Friday practice day was pretty much empty in the grandstands at times. But anyway, let's move on from this stuff and get into the watch along now. And of course, let me just quickly change the text. Of course, it is qualifying, not the race. And Q1, as I'm sure you guys already know, 18 minutes long. And we'll be knocking out the bottom 5 drivers. Let me just get the timer ready. I will sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark. So I'll get that going on screen very soon. And let me just quickly get the dotted line out to show clearly on screen where the cutoff zone is. So let me just do this quick. And yeah, there you go. Actually, let me just adjust it ever so slightly. And yeah, there you go. So obviously that dotted line, anyone below it at the end of Q1 will be out of the session and start in the bottom 5 positions, which around a track like this where you can't overtake really is also known as hell. There's Esteban Ocon there, ready to get going. There's Logan Sargent. First home race, of course. 2 more home races for him this season. The next one in Austin. And then, obviously, the penultimate race of the season in Las Vegas. As red light still on at the exit of the pit lane, Alex Albon is ready to get out there and get some laps in on the soft compound tyres. And the green light is now gone, and we are underway for qualifying in Miami. Of course, Williams were by far in qualifying last year at this track the slowest team. Not quite sure they'll end up being like that this time. They've made quite a bit of progress in the last year. And hopefully it only continues for the rest of the season. As the first few cars get out on the track. And just go through the first sector. And yeah, very hot it is in Miami. 28 degrees Celsius, the air temperature. And the track temperature, I think, in the 30s. And the mid-30s. So you don't want to be pushing too hard on your outlap because you will cook the tyres pretty hard. As Verstappen there coming out of the garage. And there you go. Timer on screen now. And we've got 17 minutes to go in Q1. As, yeah, Verstappen just coming out of the pit lane. Of course, he should end up P1 really through all three sessions. As here is Magnussen, who last year at this track was not very quick. I think he was 15th on the grid or something. And Haas have not been very quick. But we know he can be, when he wants to be, very quick over a single lap. As we're on board now with Alex Albon in the Williams. And he's just coming into the final corner to start his first flying lap of qualifying. Can Albon get into Q2? Which is something he's been doing regularly, really, for the last few months. And actually, it's not Albon. It is it Albon? They're showing Sargent as the one being timed, but I'm pretty sure. Well, I know Albon is actually further around the track. It's actually Logan Sargent we were looking at on the broadcast there. And Logan has already given up on his lap because he ran wide on the exit of turn 1, so he will have to go for another lap. That another lap, though, is not going to be great because obviously, again, you don't want to be doing too much, too many laps on your tyres around here because of how hot it is and how the track is, you know, ripping the tyres apart, really. Especially with the long, hard corners we've got. As Nico Hülkenberg starts his first flying lap, obviously crashed at turn 3, which he just went through in practice 1. And he's never raced here before. Can he continue his stronghold in 2023 over teammate Magnussen? Not a great turn 8 there, understeering a bit. As Hülkenberg now motoring down to turn 11. A reminder as well, obviously we looked at the Practice 2 data earlier. Practice 2 started an hour and a half later than qualifying has just started now. So conditions are a bit hotter than they would have been for Practice 2. As Valtteri Bottas now goes P1 for Alfa Romeo. Zhou Guanyu is up to 2nd. And then we've got, Yuki Tsunoda is up to 2nd position. With Zhou in 3rd. Not anymore. Kevin Magnussen is now quickest as Lando Norris goes 2nd. For McLaren. Would have expected a bit of a better lap there from Lando. But it is only the first lap of qualifying. So Lando up to 2nd. Russell is up to 3rd for Mercedes. I'll just quickly update that. Of course, all the drivers trying to set a good benchmark for their first lap in qualifying. Piastri now 2nd. As Max Verstappen goes quickest on a 1:28.4 decent first time in qualifying, but of course he did a 27.5 in practice 3, so we know he can go at least a second quicker, probably in this session. As replay there of Hulkenberg massively losing the rear end on the exit of turn 16, and very close to hitting the wall, thankfully did not. Yeah, Verstappen is in P1 from Magnussen second. Piastri is in third for McLaren, as Charles Leclerc now starts his first flying lap. Sergio Perez now goes quickest by a 1/10 of a second from Verstappen. So Perez first, Verstappen second. Pierre Gasly is up to third, with Esteban Ocon in fourth place. Let me just quickly do that. There you go. And then it's Magnussen 5th, Piastri 6th, Norris 7th, Russell 8th, Bottas 9th, Tsunoda 10th, and then Hulkenberg is 11th, with Zhou in 12th, Nick De Vries is 13th, with Hamilton in 14th, Albon is 15th, and then everyone in the drop zone at the minute, which is Leclerc, Sainz, Alonso, Stroll, and Sargent, have not done a first proper time in qualifying yet. So let's just see what they do quick. Logan Sargent, was 31 seconds off the pace with his first lap. Of course, we saw him back out of it as Lewis Hamilton back into the pits, even though he's in 14th place. Really not happy with his first lap. As here comes Leclerc, no purple sectors for the two Ferrari drivers, but where do they go? Leclerc goes second, only a 1/10 of a second down on Perez, and splits the two Red Bulls. And Carlos Sainz goes fourth. So yeah, pretty clear that Red Bull and Ferrari are the two best teams. So let me just quickly update that. So Leclerc up to second. Zhou Guanyu has just gone up to 6th place. That's a very good improvement on the second lap of these tyres. Yeah, Sainz is up to 4th. Zhou is, up to 6th. Valtteri Bottas has improved up to 7th. So, very good for Alfa Romeo. Logan Sargent goes up to 9th place and ahead of Albon, who also improves. So very good speed there from Williams now. Sargent, up to 9th. As just seeing Fernando Alonso doing a purple final sector and going ahead of Carlos Sainz and up to 4th place, as Lance Stroll only goes 10th. Pretty poor first run there for the Canadian. Of course, his home race not too far away. This time next month, pretty much in Canada. Alonso 4th, Stroll in 10th. And here's a replay of Lewis Hamilton, who is now actually in last place, and that's why he came into the pits. He said, check the front wing, I've just hit the wall. He came to the final corner, there was a car going slowly to back off so he could get a good run through the final corners to start its lap. And Hamilton was caught out by it and tried to veer around it and ended up, I think, clipping the wall. And it was Kevin Magnussen. And that incident has been noted by the stewards for impeding. So, very weird incident there. Talking to Magnussen, he has just gone up to 5th place for the Haas F1 team as Alex Albon comes in to the random FIA weighbridge, where, of course, they randomly call in certain drivers. Top 10 currently: Perez, Leclerc, Verstappen, Alonso, Magnussen, Sainz, Gasly, Zhou, Bottas, Ocon. And then it is Hulkenberg in 11th, with Stroll in 12th, Sargent 13th, Albon 14th. Great effort by the Americans so far. And then Piastri is 15th. And in the drop zone, some quite big names. Yuki Tsunoda Lando Norris, George Russell, Nick De Vries, and Lewis Hamilton. We've got 8 minutes only left in Q1. Russell, though, has just done a purple first sector. Very impressive first sector from Mr. Saturday himself. And, yeah, as long as he continues the rest of the lap without making a mistake, he should be fine to get into Q2. And let's see, as he comes through turn 16, what his middle sector is like. Only a tenth and a half down on Perez, so Russell is probably going to go up to 4th place with this lap. Piastri and an Ocon on better laps, if I can fucking speak English. Now, Piastri at the moment has done a 1:29.4. Gasly has just gone up to 6th place. And here comes George Russell, who goes actually 8th. Very poor final sector. But, yeah, 8th it is. And track evolution should be quite powerful here. So, certain teams are going to have to make sure they're not caught out by that today. As Charles Leclerc goes P1. 0.4 of a second clear of Sergio Perez. Esteban Ocon goes up to 6th. Piastri, by the way, only went up to 14th place. Not a good lap for the Australian. That is a replay of Zhou having a bit of a weird moment with the Ferrari there. Zhou saying, man, the Ferrari just squeezed me into the fucking wall, man, guys. What the fuck is he doing? To be fair, Zhou could have overtaken him a bit quicker instead of wondering what he was doing. I think that's probably what the Ferrari was, as Magnussen there on the exit at turn 16 touched the wall with his right front. As we just saw that. Yeah, I think Zhou probably could have overtaken him a bit quicker rather than just waiting for him to jump out of the way. As the two Red Bulls have improved quite a bit. Verstappen now P1. Perez 2nd. Max now quickest on a 1:27.3. And that incident, by the way, between Magnussen and Hamilton will be investigated after the session. Might be a grid penalty there for Magnussen. As Lewis Hamilton in 20th, now on a better lap. Yeah, Verstappen 27.3, the fastest lap of the weekend so far. 3.5 tenths clear of Perez in 2nd. Leclerc is 3rd. Sainz is 4th with Alonso 5th. And then the rest of the top 10, you've got Stroll up to 6th place. As Lewis Hamilton only goes 10th, just ahead of his teammate Russell. Really poor. And 1.3 seconds off the pace of Red Bull. Just, yeah, very, very poor. Magnussen 7th, Ocon 8th, Gasly 9th, and Hamilton is now, yeah, up to P10. But Mercedes do not look good. They look to be in big trouble here in Miami. Because those laps that were done by the two drivers, they were absolutely fine. There was no mistakes or anything. No clear, obvious reasons why they were not very quick. Yet they are only 10th and 11th. So not looking great at all. And then, you've got Hamilton 10th, Russell 11th, and then Zhou 12th, Bottas 13th, Hülkenberg 14th, and then Piastri, the driver most at risk of getting knocked out at the minute, in 15th, and currently in the drop zone. Actually, let me just wait before I say who's in the drop zone, because Alex Albon has just improved all the way up to 5th place. What a lap by the Williams driver. So Albon up to 5th. Logan Sargent improves up to 13th. No, not 12th, 13th. So yeah, with 4 minutes to go in first qualifying, guys, in the drop zone, Hülkenberg, Piastri, Tsunoda, Norris, and De Vries. Where has McLaren's pace gone? Surely, after what was a great day yesterday, they're not going to get both cars knocked out in Q1. That would be incredibly poor. As Hülkenberg, currently in 16th, is on a better lap. To the line he comes, and much better lap. He goes up to 4th place. What an improvement, and that's clear proof right there of what I was talking about. Track evolution is probably going to catch out some drivers and teams, as Bottas goes all the way up to 5th, and Zhou, I think, went up to 10th or 11th place for Alfa Romeo. Nick De Vries goes up to 8th for AlphaTauri. Very good improvement by him. So De Vries up to 8th. Tsunoda is up to 10th. So AlphaTauri looking a lot better now. And here's a replay of, a bit of an unsafe release there. The AlphaTauri on the Haas of Hulkenberg. We saw it a bit late, though, or I did at least, so I'm not quite sure what to make of it. But that will probably just be a nothing burger. And I think AlphaTauri, even if they do get punished, it'll be a small fine. As Lewis Hamilton back into the pits. Was he back into the pits, or is he now just coming out? I think now just coming out on track for his final lap in Q1. As other improvements, we've got, Zhou is actually up to 12th place for Alfa Romeo. So, in the drop zone, with 2 minutes to go, both Mercedes drivers of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, the American Logan Sargeant, and both McLarens of Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris. What a shock that would be if those drivers and teams were to get knocked out here in Q1. Surely they can't. I'd be truly amazed if that if those teams were to suffer here in Q1, as the heat only increases on those teams here in this hot Miami venue, as Lando Norris in last place begins his final lap of Q1. Surely, as long as Lando does the best he can with his lap and doesn't make any mistakes, he will be fine to get through to Q2, as Kevin Magnussen all the way up to 3rd. Also, another team that needs to watch out in terms of the track improving is Aston Martin, currently 10th and 12th, as Leclerc goes up to 3rd. Haas are now 4th and 5th. Very good Q1 for them. And Lando Norris didn't quite see his first sector time, but it is an improved first sector time. Carlos Sainz goes up to 2nd. As Hamilton and Russell, by the way, are now on their last flying lap. So I'll let you know how they're doing. Logan Sargeant is up to 13th. That pushes the Alpine of Gasly into the drop zone. As Lando Norris, here he comes to the final corner. Can he do enough to get into Q2? Surely he can, as Russell hasn't done the greatest first sector, I have to say, as Lando Norris comes to the line and goes P11. Will that be enough as the checkered flag now falls? Yeah, Norris up to P11. Alonso, I think, has just gone up to 8th. Lance Stroll finishes a lap, improves, but only stays in 13th. Tsunoda is above him. Zhou improves up to 8th place. So Stroll could be in serious trouble here as Esteban Ocon is up to 6th for Alpine. And is there any more improvements? I can't see at the moment. But Lance Stroll, the driver, at risk as Piastri goes up to 16th only. He is out in Q1. Gasly is up to 9th. And you know what that means? Lance Stroll is out in Q1 as George Russell goes 10th. Lewis Hamilton goes 6th. So the two Mercedes drivers do, in the end, make it through to Q2. But, well, they definitely caused some heart attacks in the garage. As Lewis Hamilton, went up to 6th. Gasly improved and went up to 10th. George Russell improved and went up to P11. For the rest of the field, I think I've got it correct. Hold on. I think, Zhou is actually in 13th. And for the rest of the field, Valtteri Bottas improved by a couple positions. And yeah, for the rest of the field, I think it is as is. So that is Q1, guys, over and done with. Into Q2, Max Verstappen, Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, Charles Leclerc, Kevin Magnussen, Lewis Hamilton, Valtteri Bottas, Esteban Ocon, Nico Hulkenberg, Pierre Gasly, George Russell, Fernando Alonso, Zhou Guanyu, Alex Albon, Nick De Vries into Q2. Good job by him to outqualify his teammate, who is out in Q1, and also out in Q1, Lando Norris in 16th. Then it is Yuki Tsunoda in 17th. Lance Stroll knocked out in the Aston Martin in 18th place. What a shocker for him and the team. Piastri out in 19th. Both McLarens out in Q1. A disaster for the McLaren team, with Logan Sargeant, the home driver, out in 20th place. And now we will prepare ourselves for Q2. But what a surprising Q1 that was. And again, the track evolution definitely catching Stroll and Aston Martin out. And McLaren just weren't quick enough, were they? Just were not quick enough. No pace whatsoever. Yeah. I don't even know what to say. I did not expect McLaren to suddenly do that. To drop an absolute stinker in what do you call it? In qualifying. That is a horrible performance by McLaren. I mean, makes things more exciting, I guess, you know, for us, because it's not what we expect, and I think they can do better than that, but 16th and 19th on the grid, that is a massive setback for them after what was thought to be a step forward. But, yeah, Lance Stroll, the simple fact with Stroll is his final lap was, I think he did improve his lap time, but it was only by a small margin. And then obviously everyone, except Piastri and Sargeant, went quicker than him. And that's what put him down into the drop zone. And to be honest, when I saw him not improve really on his lap time, I kind of knew he was going to get knocked out because, you know, the cars behind were very likely, and they did, swallow him up. Also, though, Fernando Alonso, not quick, only 12th. So maybe Aston Martin just really struggling with their car. But helps the midfield teams that you've got one front-running team already out with one car in Q1. But, yeah, it's going to be, you know, with two McLarens out in Q1 and Aston Martin, it's going to really now make the rest of this session very interesting in the midfield to see what happens. And even though both Mercedes made it into Q2, they're still not very quick. So, yeah, I'm really intrigued to see how the rest of this session plays out. As, yeah, Logan Sargeant there. I think just getting out of his Williams car. Of course, sadly for him, qualifying last on the grid. And his teammate Albon getting through. And of course, for Albon and Williams, it's great that, you know, both McLarens and an Aston Martin have fallen foul of the cut-off zone. That means Williams might be able to get into the top 10. But, right, let me just quickly, what do you call it? Let me just quickly put another dotted line on the screen and move it up, obviously, to show where the cut-off zone is for Q2. And obviously, between those two dotted lines at the end of Q2, whoever's in those positions of 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th will be out of the session. As Q2 will start in 40 seconds time, according to the TV broadcast. Yeah, I think Mercedes, are definitely at risk of getting knocked out here in Q2 with at least one car. Maybe even Aston Martin. getting Alonso eliminated in Q2. Definitely a possibility. I mean, if Stroll wasn't that quick, I don't think Alonso is going to magically be, a second, 2 seconds quicker. So, yeah, really not good for the Aston Martin team. Turbo asks, has Russell been out-qualifying Hamilton this year? Well, so far, it's 3-1 to Russell. First 3 races, Russell out-qualified Hamilton, but in Baku, Hamilton got one over him, and obviously Russell ended up 11th in Baku, and Hamilton was, where was Hamilton? Was he 5th? I think, yeah, he was 5th on the grid. Really impressive result it was. Really great drive, I have to say again, from Lewis in Baku. Did the absolute best he could with what was a pretty shit car. And, right, so we've got about 15 more seconds until I get the timer back on screen as Q2 is underway. Almost half the cars back on the track to try and maybe find their way into Q3. And there you go. 14 minutes to go in Q2. Also, another shout out is, Nick De Vries again, out qualifying Tsunoda. Good to see some progress. But also, Alfa Romeo, really looking much better here. Both cars into Q2 and out qualifying the McLaren team. And they maybe could out qualify Williams here as well. They looked pretty quick. I mean, in Q1, they were, 7th and 13th, which was pretty good for them. So, yeah, good to see Alfa Romeo looking better, because I was a bit worried about them after their drop-off from Bahrain. That they were going to fall apart, really, going forward. Of course, they brought a new upgrade at the Australian Grand Prix, which was a nose cone. Let me just update this picture so you can actually see the bloody car, which is an Alpine. They brought a new nose cone in Australia, but it didn't seem to improve their car. But maybe they're now getting the best out of that upgrade, as Max Verstappen really starting to attack the track now on his first lap of Q2. Quickest time in Q1, I think, was a low 27. I'm expecting them to get into the 126s now, and my expectation still is that pole position will be a mid to low 126, and it will be done by this man on screen. Not on my screen, but on the TV broadcast, Max Verstappen. As Max, through the chicane of 14 and 15, now through the Mickey Mouse section he goes, and, purple middle sector. And Verstappen, now, and on this lap, by the way, he's about 0.3 of a second up on Perez, who's not too far behind him on this lap. As Verstappen now exiting the final corner, to the line he comes. What's the lap time? 1:27.1, not as quick as I thought he would be. What does Perez do? It's a 1:27.3. Yeah, Red Bull not as quick there as I expected. Zhou goes up to 3rd for Alfa Romeo. And George Russell now goes up to 3rd for the Mercedes team. And here comes Lewis Hamilton. Can he go better than Russell? No, he cannot. 1:28.3 and about 1/10 slower than his teammate. So Hamilton in 4th. Alonso goes 3rd and goes 0.7 of a second quicker than George Russell in the Mercedes. So that is incredible, the lap time difference. So Alonso up to 3rd. Hulkenberg goes ahead of the team Mercedes as well in 4th. And then Magnussen goes ahead as well of the team Mercedes in 5th. Haas look very quick here. Good to see. Really good to see. Of course, for the crowd First of Haas's home races, of course, them being an American team. But only 8 times on the board so far. Verstappen, Perez, Alonso, Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Russell, Hamilton, Zhou is the order of the times that have been done. And yeah, I think Haas could probably get at least one car into Q3. Maybe even both. As here is Esteban Ocon backing up a lot into the final corner. To not take too much out the tyres and also to get a great run out the final corner to begin his first flying lap. As Nick De Vries is currently on a flying lap. Sainz, Leclerc, Gasly, Albon are all on out laps at the minute. Valtteri Bottas is still in the pit lane, which is interesting. Given that Zhou's already been out on track and already come back into the pits, you'd expect Bottas to have been out there, so maybe there's a problem with his car. As Alpine car, I've got to say, looked very good in the first sector there. And obviously great for Alpine that they've outdone McLaren today at the bare minimum. First sector, okay from Alpine. Nothing special. As Ocon, about half a tenth quicker than Gasly so far on the lap after the first sector. Is just coming through the corners of the middle sector. The Mickey Mouse section, as I like to call it. And Ocon in the Alpine looking pretty good. And the Alpine looking pretty hooked up to the track, I have to say. Looking a lot better than it did yesterday. As Nick De Vries completes his first lap time and goes 9th, which is the slowest out of the 9 times we've had so far. And he's 7/10 of a second almost slower than just Zhou Guan Yu in the Alfa Romeo. So yeah, pretty poor first lap there for De Vries. Here comes Ocon though. Where can he go in the Alpine? And it is 4th place. Brilliant lap from Ocon. So Ocon up to 4th. Here comes Pierre Gasly. What can he do? He goes 5th. 4th and 5th for the Alpine team. Obviously, Ferrari still have to do their lap times, but Alpine are looking very good. Very good here. As Carlos Sainz has just done the purple, or done a purple first sector, which is interesting. As Charles Leclerc's not obviously done one. Alex Albon also on a lap now. Valtteri Bottas still in the pits. I might have a look on Twitter in a moment to see if Bottas has a problem with his car. Because I don't know why. I can't imagine they've wasted that many tyres. As Carlos Sainz does a purple middle sector as well. Really great lap from the Spaniard as Albon does a brilliant middle sector. Albon is going to easily get into the top 10 and probably be right there with the Haases and maybe ahead of the Mercedes as Leclerc only goes 4th behind Alonso and the Aston Martin. And Carlos Sainz goes 2nd. 0.04 of a second only, slower than his ex-teammate Max Verstappen. They're looking good there for Ferrari. But Leclerc, you would expect to show a bit more pace than that. As Alex Albon, what a lap, goes up to 7th place, splitting the two Alpines. And that now pushes both Mercedes drivers into the drop zone with 6.5 minutes to go. Imagine if both Mercedes drivers get knocked out in Q2. That would be incredible. And you know what? If the race is bone dry tomorrow, if we do get both Mercedes out in Q2, and, you know, obviously we've got both McLarens and the Aston Martin of Stroll out in Q1, at least that would make things more interesting for the race tomorrow, having some cars and drivers out of position. It's something, and I'll take it at this point. As, yeah, in the drop zone with almost 5.5 minutes left is Russell in the Mercedes, Hamilton in the Mercedes, Zhou in the Alfa Romeo, De Vries in the AlphaTauri, and Valtteri Bottas is now on track, I am pleased to say. Maybe they did use too many tyres for Valtteri. Maybe that's why they were in the pits, just trying to make sure they do only one run. As I think Perez there on the entry to turn 4 clipped the wall. Yeah, he did. Clipped it pretty hard. You can break your steering doing that. You can break your, you can cause yourself a puncture. You can break the gearbox. That is definitely something around a street circuit you do not want to do, as it can cause a lot of damage. But, yeah, at the minute, we've got a very interesting drop zone. And we'll see whether it stays that way as the Ferrari just about gets out of the way of Bottas. And the other Ferrari gets out of the way as well into turn 1. And let's see if Valtteri can maybe get near those... is this Valtteri? No, this is actually Zhou. Bottas is actually just a bit further back. So Zhou, currently in 13th. Can he get any closer to the 2 Mercedes drivers ahead? Obviously, Alfa Romeo, we have to remember, this time last year at this track were very quick here. Valtteri Bottas, the 2022 Miami Grand Prix, was 5th on the grid and was going to finish probably 5th in the race if it wasn't for the safety car coming out at the end of the race, or towards the end of the race, that caused him to be a bit out of... not a bit out of position, but he was then under threat from drivers with fresher tyres, such as Russell and the Mercedes, and then went and made a mistake at the final corner as well, under pressure, obviously, from both Mercedes drivers. So, good memories for Bottas at this track, and definitely likes it here. So, maybe that's why Alfa Romeo have been so quick, or so much quicker, because they like this track so much. As Zhou, on a good lap, what can he do? Can he get into the top 10? Yes, he can, but not by much. Only by 0.06 of a second. And to be honest, if he can't do much better than that, I don't see how Alfa Romeo can get into the top 10. Just as I say that, Valtteri Bottas does an absolute stonker of a lap and goes up to 6th place. What a lap by the Flying Finn. And only 0.5 slower than Leclerc in the Ferrari. I know it's a bit later in the session, so the track will be in even better condition. But wow, what a lap by Bottas. And that does, as you can see, push Mercedes into 13th and 14th place. Surely they can improve from that. To be honest, I'm kind of hoping they don't, to make tomorrow's race a bit more exciting, but we'll see what they can do. As here's a replay of Alonso being released from his garage and having to brake there for the Haas car of Hulkenberg, I think that was. Maybe that'll be under investigation after the session. But just under 2 minutes to go now. And we have really only one final lap to go in Q2. And currently in the elimination zone, Zhou, Magnussen, Russell, Hamilton, De Vries. Can any of those drivers find their way into Q3? The second edition of the Miami Grand Prix. Kevin Magnussen is on his final lap. Haas looking a bit good. Bit better this weekend. Can Magnussen deliver on that better pace? Through the first sector he comes. Charles Leclerc has just gone P1 on a 1:26.9. Very good lap there in Q2. Magnussen does a decent first sector. Nothing special. But yeah, Leclerc up to P1 now. As Alonso does a good first sector, 0.03 of a second quicker than Leclerc. As Hulkenberg has not improved his first sector. I think Hulkenberg has made a mistake in Sector 1. And that is probably going to cost him getting into Q3 as his teammate Kevin Magnussen roars his way down to the final corner. And can Magnussen now make it into the top 10 for the first time in quite a while? Here he comes. Kevin Magnussen does go up to 7th, but will he stay there? He did not improve his final sector. Will that cost him? As Max Verstappen goes back up to P1 on a 1:26.8. Alonso goes 3rd with a purple final sector. He's definitely into Q3. Here's Ocon, currently in 8th. And he goes 6th as the checkered flag is now falling. Nick De Vries stays in 15th. To be honest, he did well enough just out qualifying Tsunoda. George Russell only goes 9th. Will that be enough? As Lewis Hamilton stays in 13th. Hamilton is out in Q2, 13th only. What an incredibly bad result for Hamilton. Will both Mercedes, though, be knocked out in Q2 as Gasly goes 8th, and that pushes Russell down to 10th. And is Albon out there on a better lap? I'm not sure that he is, and I think Russell might have just sneaked his way into Q3. As we're looking at the minute at Lewis Hamilton. I'll just wait because Albon has not pitted or, come to the finish line yet. But I think Russell might have just sneaked his way into the top 10. And yes, Albon pits. Still a good qualifying for Albon, but there you go. So, let me get into the results of Q2. So going into the shootout of qualifying 3 on the streets of Miami, Florida, are Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, Valtteri Bottas. What a brilliant job by him, by the way, Bottas. Great to see him back to life. Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen. Great to see him in the top 10. And George Russell barely gets into the top 10. Meaning that knocked out in Q2, Alex Albon, Nico Hülkenberg, Lewis Hamilton, Zhou Guanyu, and Nick De Vries. Wow. Not many, we don't have it many times where Lewis Hamilton is knocked out before Q3. But it has happened here. 13th only. And to be honest, yeah, it was a poor effort from Hamilton. I just saw, he made a couple little errors in the middle sector, which cost him quite a bit. But even though it wasn't a good enough job from Hamilton, I think we have to say, clearly by looking at what Russell has been doing, Mercedes are really bad. Really bad. So I don't think Lewis would have been capable of that much in Q3, even if he got through to Q3. And Mercedes are a midfield team right now. They are a midfield team. It is a sad sight. McLaren from Race says, bloody hell, told you Chaz a one workout in Q2. Yeah, it's incredible. 3 years ago, obviously we were all scared of COVID, but Mercedes were by far the best team in Formula One. Had one of the best cars, if not the best car in Formula One history. 2 years ago, they were still an amazing team, and obviously, in the end, missed out on the championship due to pretty bad reasons. But, for them to go from where they were 2 or 3 years ago to this, the downfall is just incredible. I know they're bringing upgrades soon, but remember, in Formula One, there is no guarantee that upgrades do work. Sometimes they don't. Ferrari is a great example of that, where Ferrari, many times over the years, have brought upgrades, and they haven't gone to plan. So, if Mercedes' upgrades don't go to plan at Imola, they are fucked. They are absolutely fucked. Because they are now a midfield team. Yeah. sad sight. Well, maybe not for everyone. But I mean, with the two drivers they've got, it would be great to see them fighting, towards the front of the field, because that's where they deserve to be. But that car is a shower of shite. And I'm just seeing a replay of Hamilton's, I think, final lap. And yeah, big mistake at turn 1. And then the lap just unraveled from there. But just want to quickly shout out Alpine. Great performance. Definitely the best midfield team here. Valtteri Bottas. Brilliant job by him. One of the stars of qualifying. Kevin Magnussen. I love the guy. Really great to see Magnussen into Q3. And as for everyone else, I think they really just did really what you'd expect them to do. As Hamilton trudges away. And tomorrow is going to be an incredibly painful race because, I mean, he should have the pace to improve, obviously, from 13th, but that Mercedes car is not exactly quick down the straights, and it is not that easy to overtake here. So Hamilton is going to have an incredibly painful Miami Grand Prix, and we'll have to pray for well-timed red flags, safety cars, virtual safety cars to make serious progress. But Q3 will begin very shortly, and of course will be 12 minutes long. And to me, Red Bull still seem to be the quicker team, but I'm not sure Red Bull have got the pace to lock out the front row, but we will see here in Q3. But Ferrari are not that far behind, and Alonso, out of nowhere, has started showing some good speed. So we'll see what happens. Let me know in the chat, guys. Who gets pole? Is it Verstappen, Leclerc, Alonso, Perez, Sainz? Let me know in the chat who you think will get the pole position. As yeah, the only Mercedes in Q3 is George Russell. And Russell only barely got in. And I'm not sure Russell is going to do that much better than he did in Q2. Because, Alpine looked pretty quick. Haas have looked good. Bottas is having another brilliant weekend like he did this time last year at this track. So Russell has his work cut out for him. And I have to say, this has been a very exciting qualifying. Very exciting qualifying. Many surprises, which of course is something we like. As all the drivers still in the pit lane. And no action yet. And I don't even think the session has started yet. So yeah. I'll let you know when we properly get underway. As there is Carlos Sainz. And Q3 starts in 25 seconds from now. As Christian Horner, the Red Bull team principal, being interviewed by Sky F1 on the pit wall. Yeah, Red Bull, like I said, they don't... I thought coming into qualifying, they would be just too quick. But now, they don't seem to be as quick as they were in practice. Ferrari have definitely, I wouldn't say closed the gap, but now that F1 is showing what they truly have, Ferrari are not that far behind, at least over a single lap. But if Ferrari are going to beat Red Bull in the race, Ferrari have to get pole position. There is absolutely no chance they will beat Red Bull from behind them on the grid. I really do not see that happening. As session has begun, Verstappen, Alonso, Perez, Ocon, Russell, Magnussen already on the track. I will get the timer on screen in 20 seconds from now as we begin the shootout. Bottas there in the Alfa Romeo. Has he got any tyres left? I hope he has, because he could maybe get like an 8th or a 7th even on the grid. As there you go. 11 minutes to go. In Q3, let me know again in the chat quickly. Who do you think will get pole position? As the two Ferraris still in the pit lane, interestingly. So either they're leaving them late to come out for the first run, or they're going to do a bit of a different plan. as the two Red Bulls are the first two cars on track. And note, Leclerc is on track now, and so is Sainz. So they're just going a bit later to probably just get that better grip. And Alonso we're looking at. Didn't quite see what his team radio message was, as the wind speed is, quite... Well, it's picked up quite a bit. It's 14 kilometers an hour. A steady breeze, which, I mean, it can affect the cars, but it's not going to affect it enough to make a real difference. As Max Verstappen begins his first attempt at getting his first ever pole position on the streets of Miami. Something he should have got last year if he didn't blow his final attempt in Q3. But can he deliver this time? As through the corners where he made a mistake last year, he gets it not quite absolutely bang on. He was very much on the edge. Oh, and makes a mistake there through turn 7 and backs off. So once again, Max, when the pressure really got turned up there in that first sector, making mistakes just like he did last year. And just pushing a bit too hard as Max now lets Perez through, and Max presumably will do his first time in a moment, but of course he'll have to do it on 1 lap older tyres, which will hurt him going into the final run and mean he'll have more work to do to get pole position. As Sergio Perez, what can he do? Can he set a really good benchmark, which would probably be a mid-26, a mid-126, or even a low 1 minute 26 would be incredible from Perez and would really set the world alight. Let's see what Perez does as he comes into the final corner. 2 faster sectors over Alonso, so he's looking good there. And Perez to the line. What's his lap time? It's a 1:26.8, which is decent but not great. So Perez P1. Ocon is up to second. Alonso now goes second with a purple final sector, but is about 4 tenths off the pace. George Russell goes up to third ahead of Ocon in the Alpine. Here comes Gasly, who now goes third. Brilliant lap by the gas man. As no more times for the moment. Leclerc, though, has done a purple middle sector as Kevin Magnussen third in the Haas. What a lap from Magnussen. And Mercedes suffering once again as Leclerc. Oh, he's had a really bad final corner, slipping and sliding all over the place. You'd think you're in the real harbour this time here in Miami in that final corner. And Leclerc, because of that bad final corner, only goes now 7th because Sainz has gone up to 3rd place. Poor first runs for Ferrari. Behind Aston Martin there is Sainz. And yeah, Leclerc all the way down in P7 as Max Verstappen, by the way, came back into the pit lane, decided he didn't want to bother doing another run. And yeah, just a bit of oversteer. I think through turn 6, and then just went a tad too wide, and then he said on radio, went wide fuck, is what he said. And I think just carried a tad too much speed into turn 6 and 7, and that's what caused him to have to back off the lap. And here's a replay of Leclerc. Yeah, lock the inside front, and when you're offline here in Miami, there is no grip. And that's why he's down in 7th and 1 second off pole position. So, as Charles Leclerc looks as though he might be going for another lap here. I think actually it would be better for Leclerc if he actually came back into the pit lane to give himself enough time to get fueled up for another run. But is he going to go for another lap? No. Good. I was going to say, no point going for another lap there. But at the moment, guys, we have, for the top 10, Perez on pole, Alonso second, Sainz third, Kevin Magnussen in fourth, Gasly fifth, Russell sixth, Leclerc seventh, Ocon eighth. What a top 8 that would be. And then obviously Verstappen ninth, Bottas 10th. Verstappen, of course, not set a proper time so far. But, yeah, what a grid that would be. As Verstappen, with 5 minutes to go, I'd imagine will be released from the pit lane in the next 90 seconds or so. Yeah, Ferrari, despite going out later than Red Bull in that first part Q3, didn't work because they both had poor first attempts. Sainz half a second down on Perez with his first lap and in third behind an Aston Martin, which really is not what the Ferrari car pace is. They should be ahead of Aston Martin. And then Leclerc obviously making his mistake and ending up 7th. As Ferrari, I think this time I'm going to go early. As Leclerc and Sainz out of the garage and out onto track. As here is Leclerc. And did he slightly touch the wall? He says, check the car. I think I touched the wall in turn 17. Sorry, turn 16. Yeah, very light graze of the wall, but I don't think that'll be a problem. Clearly was right on the edge before he made that mistake at the final corner. Max Verstappen now comes out of the garage. Can he, this time, deliver a lap that will see him on pole position? Because again, this time last year, did the same thing. He blew his chance at pole at about that part of the track, turns 6, 7, and 8, and it cost him what would have been an easier race. Obviously went on to win, but it would have been a much easier race if he actually got pole position. Cannot afford to blow it again, especially with his teammate in first place. Because, I mean, if Max was to finish where he is now, and Perez started on pole, Perez could probably take the lead of the championship at the end of the Miami Grand Prix if Verstappen was to continue having a poor session here. But I'm sure Max will get it together. As everyone on an outlap, good to see Bottas out there as well. Hopefully he has a good session. And here comes Charles Leclerc into the final corner where he made his mistake. Gets a good exit as he starts his final lap. Can he get, for the second year in a row, pole position in Miami, and for the second race in a row, pole position in Formula 1? Into turn 1. Looks all good. And through turn 2 and 3 as well, looks brilliant. The Ferrari car, no issues through there. Of course, we'll see his first sector time very soon. Now through turn 5, 6, 7. Oh, he spun it and he's going to go into the barriers and a big accident. The rear wing is in the barriers and that will be a red flag. But that will not be necessarily the end of the session. If they red flag it now, I don't know why they've still got yellow flags. Are they going to red flag it or are they just going to let the session continue? I think they're just going to let the session continue, guys. With a yellow flag in Sector 1. Now they throw the red flag out. I don't know why they did it earlier, because we could have still got in the final runs here in Q3. They took way too long to throw out the red flag when it was clear there was a red flag or a situation that would cause a red flag. And if they do not restart the session, I do not have to remind you what your top 10 will be and where a certain world champion of ours will be on the grid. Session will not be resumed. Verstappen has been absolutely screwed. And Sergio Perez is on pole in Miami. And well, yeah, Max, very unlucky there. But at the end of the day, he didn't get his first lap right. If he did, this wouldn't have happened. So it's his own fault as to why he's P9 on the grid. But Perez is on pole what a grid we've got for tomorrow's race, even though I'm not going to get too overexcited. Wow, what an incredible finish here in Miami. And I'll just wait for the timer to just tick to over. But yeah, Max Verstappen will start the race 9th. And surely, given how hard it will be to overtake around here, he will not be able to win tomorrow. I'm sure. Frustrated as hell he'll be on the radio. But at the end of the day, yeah, he was unlucky with that final red flag. But he made the mistake in the early part of the session. You know these things could happen around a street circuit. You know, he caused this to possibly happen. And then, obviously, it happened against him. So, it's his own fault with Verstappen. And, well, definitely spices things up for us tomorrow. But, there you go, guys. Qualifying over and done with. Let me go through the results on what is going to be an amazing starting grid compared to what I thought it would be for tomorrow's Miami Grand Prix. Sergio Perez will start on pole with Fernando Alonso alongside on the front row in second. Carlos Sainz will be in third. Leclerc, by the way, just watching a replay of his accident and just took too much curb on the entry to turn 7, unsettled the rear of the car, and he was in the barriers. Pushed too hard and got what he deserved. Something Leclerc is often guilty of. But yeah, Perez is on pole. Alonso will be on the front row, similar to Saudi Arabia, of course, where those two are on the front row. Sainz will be third. Kevin Magnussen will be fourth on the grid, unless he gets a penalty for impeding Hamilton. Of course, we'll see what happens with that. Gasly will be fifth, with Russell sixth, Leclerc seventh, Ocon eighth. Max Verstappen will start in ninth, with Bottas 10th, and the rest of the field will be Alex Albon in P11, Hulkenberg 12th, Hamilton 13th, Joe 14th, De Vries 15th, Norris 16th, Tsunoda 17th, Stroll 18th, Piastri 19th, and Logan Sargent will start last for tomorrow's Miami Grand Prix. But what a grid! And maybe that will just be enough to give us something, or give us somewhat of an exciting race tomorrow in Miami. Wow. Right. So, now that qualifying is done with, I want to know from you guys, who is driver of the day for qualifying today. So, let me just quickly organize that. So, who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Miami? And the options I will go for will be Perez, Alonso, Magnussen, and I will go with Bottas as another option as well, because I think him getting into the top 10 was a remarkable effort, to be honest. Yeah, out of those four, let me know who you think driver of the day is. For me, it would be, I think, Kevin Magnussen. I think fourth on the grid. There is not one person on this planet that thought that was going to happen. Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And, yeah. Like I said, tomorrow, I don't think we're going to see a ton of overtaking. I mean, obviously, Verstappen will make his way through the field, because obviously he's a lot quicker than other cars out there. But it gives us, for a dry race, this current starting grid, the best hope for a good, naturally good race. So, I can't complain about what's happened today. Anyway, I'll just quickly tweet the link out, or post the link out a couple of times, and I'll come to you guys in the chat. Come join us here to react to crazy qualifying in Miami. And I'll just quickly post it out on Twitter as well. Come join us here to react to a crazy qualifying at the Miami GP. And I'll just quickly get this posted, and then you will get straight to your comments in the chat and your live reaction. Sorry, live reaction. So there you go. And let's see what you guys have to say. Opulence, cheers, mate, for the super chat. $1.99, who says, Chazza, I called Perez P1. You did. Well done to you for getting the prediction right. Selvin Hunter says, watch Max play bumper cars tomorrow while Lewis shows him how to overtake like a legend, lol. Prank says, Carlos saying he's glad Charles crashed before he could. McLaren F1 Race says, Chazza, my double Merc prediction came true. The other Merc 1 second off pole. That's true. Well done for your prediction there. Let's see if I can find some other comments here. Prank saying Leclerc driver of the day. Will Chan says Magnussen. Race going to be wild if there's a first lap incident tomorrow. Yeah, it could definitely make things even more crazy. Say Riccara says, I should not be saying Mr. Germany 2018's name this much, but why does Leclerc still do this on dry tracks? I think we've said it before. Leclerc occasionally does push too hard and ends up, ends in disaster. But I mean, let's not go too hard on him. Look at Max Verstappen. I mean, yeah, he didn't end up in the barriers, but pushed too hard with his first lap. Ended up having to, not do the lap. And then with his final lap, obviously, yeah, it was interrupted by the red flag. But Verstappen shouldn't have made the mistake in the first place to allow that to even happen. Because, I mean, if he did a proper lap, he probably would be P2 on the grid at worst for tomorrow, which even though that wouldn't be great for him, it would be better than 9th. Anders Ericsson says, K-Mag will eat Sainz in the start tomorrow for sure, I hope. It'd be great if Magnussen could get ahead on the start. And yeah, Prank making a great point for what I'm trying to say. Max left the door open and bad luck walked in. Oh well, exactly, that's what I mean. Can't allow these things to happen. Crystal Racing says, poll idea, should the guy who brings out the red flag be forced to start 10th, 15th or 20th, depending if it's Q3, Q2 or Q1? I've seen that suggested, but I don't think we should bring that in because at the end of the day, that driver, up until that point in the session, deserves to be in that position wherever he is. I know it's an inconvenience for everyone, but it's an inconvenience for everyone. Literally everyone. Yeah, well, maybe not everyone. Obviously, whoever gets pole or a much better position than they hoped they were going to get, they benefit. But, they're all competitors. They want to finish qualifying with green flags and that. But it happens. Bad luck happens. I mean, look at, virtual safety cars. Sometimes they come out at the right time for others. Sometimes they come out at the wrong time for certain people. So there's nothing you can do about it. Let's find some other comments here if I can. Do Ferrari need a fast driver? What about K-Mag? They've got two, absolutely fine drivers, but, they don't always perform up to their best level. But, yeah, I think the drivers have got absolutely fine. I think they got bigger problems than the drivers, to be honest. Crystal Racing says Leclerc is a bit too much of a speed merchant, but not a truly complete driver, to be honest. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think Leclerc will get better with it because I mean he is still young. He's relatively young. I mean he's only been in Formula One for 5 years. So I think over time it will help. Leclerc, and obviously if he gets into better teams, better situations, he won't have to push as hard. Because in that Ferrari car, he has to push, obviously harder because, because they haven't got the comfortability to have the best car, and also a lot more pressure driving for Ferrari than there is other teams. But yeah, he's 25 years old. I think he will improve on it in future years. I don't think he's always going to be like this. Maybe he'll always have an accident in him, but I don't think he's going to be like this, for the rest of his career. But yeah, I'd agree that he's not, the complete package just yet. Eugene Kelly asks, Chazzy, you think Max will play well being behind Russell tomorrow? I mean, against anyone, if he gets a look at the back of someone, he's gonna, if he sees a gap that he thinks he can get his car into, he'll go for it. We know what Max is like. Maybe we'll get some more controversy with those two. By the way, we're on 88 likes at the minute. Let's try, if we can, before the end of the stream, to get up to 100. That would be brilliant if we get to 100 likes for the stream. Yeah, make sure to hit the like button if you haven't already. And remember, I will be live for the race tomorrow. I'll be going live at 6:30 p.m. UK time, 2 hours before the race starts, to obviously build up to the race, watch along the race and commentate on the race, and then do a reaction with you guys to whatever happens tomorrow in Florida. And hopefully quite a bit happens, but I am definitely not going to go in expecting really anything, because that would be silly. Turbo saying, Hispanic domination today in Miami, conspiracy. Yeah, it's a bit weird, definitely. Let's have a 4 p.m. thunderstorm tomorrow to spice stuff up. There is apparently a decent chance of rain in the race tomorrow, but whether it happens or not is it's a complete different story. The weather in Florida does tend to be pretty unpredictable, so yeah, we'll see. If it happens, it happens. Crystal Racing says Checo does seem to have a bit of Rosberg's 2016 luck right now. F1 needs him in the World Championship fight. Yeah, I mean, it'd be great if he could obviously get in the championship fight, but yeah, similar to Rosberg. And look, obviously Rosberg had a brilliant season in 2016, but did need quite a bit of luck to win that championship. Obviously Hamilton having engine issues at certain races definitely helped quite a bit, especially when Hamilton was in brilliant point scoring positions. Obviously Malaysia being one of them. But Perez is doing exactly what he should be doing. The only race this season where Perez has not produced what he should in that car is obviously Australia, where he finished 5th. Obviously started at the very back of the field after a poor weekend, really. But other than that, he's been doing really the best you can expect in that Red Bull car. And yeah, pole position here in Miami. And that is his second pole position of the year in the first 5 races. Very good. He gets 2 pole positions in the first 5 races, I have to say. Sylvan says, poor Sky, their narrative about Max being the next best thing to slice bread don't seem to hold water anymore. Anders Eriksson says, thanks for the exciting qualifying, Chaz. Love your comments. See you tomorrow. Yeah, cheers for coming along. Been great to have you. Yeah, we're on 96 likes now. Yeah, if we can just tick up to 100, that would be great. Let's see if I can find some other comments here. And currently, I have to say, surprisingly, Perez is winning the Driver of the Day vote. When I expected it wouldn't be him, to be honest. Let's find some other comments here that I haven't read out. Seyragara says, thing is, I called Leclerc's crash even before it happened. Yeah, sometimes with him, you can, it is possible. It's more of a possibility when you watch Leclerc on track that you think, maybe he could make a mistake. And I think with Leclerc, I think that's probably the biggest reason why I have him below in terms of my driver rankings for the current grid, below Verstappen and Hamilton, because Leclerc's got the speed of Verstappen and Hamilton. I don't think he has a race pace problem. I think his race pace is fine. I think the issue is the Ferrari car. He's never driven a Ferrari car that's had good race pace. So, that's never helped. And then, what do you call it? I think at times, yeah, he has had to overcompensate at times, which also doesn't help with looking after tyres. But the biggest reason why I can't put Leclerc, even though I think he's on that top echelon with Verstappen and Hamilton, the reason he's not as good as Verstappen and Hamilton is because these type of things do happen, and he isn't quite as consistent as Max and Lewis are. So, yeah. Let's find some other comments if we can. Turbo says, I'm a Hamilton and Verstappen fan. Verstappen is very, very good, on the level, I would say, of Hamilton. Plus, don't most view Sky as Red Bull Verstappen haters, aka Ted Kravitz. Yeah, you've got certain members of that team that don't mind Red Bull, such as Karun, who definitely make sure to defend Red Bull when they can. Right, let's find some other comments here if I can quick. Looking good for Checo to grab 3 street wins on the first 3 street tracks. Obviously, well, Albert Park also a street circuit, but yeah. Obviously, Perez, brilliant. Always has been around street circuits. So, obviously, it's not the biggest surprise in the world that he does well around street circuits, but yeah. Having Perez really a brilliant season. Luck definitely on his side so far this season, but at the end of the day, he has delivered what he has needed to deliver. Say 95% of the time. Max Verstappen, I think, has had a very good start to the season, but yeah, he's today he's allowed, as Prank was saying earlier, he's allowed bad luck to get in his way because he didn't do a good enough lap at the start of Q3. And that's what happens when you don't get it right. And he's done it for the second year in a row at that part of the track, and it's actually cost him even more this time. Right, let's find some other comments here. And probably the final few comments, I would say, before we come to the end of the stream, because I've been going for nearly 3 hours, and obviously there's not much more to say about what's happening qualifying. Of course, in the build-up to the race tomorrow, I will in-depth cover a a lot of what happened in qualifying, and also look at the race pace from Friday FP2 to to give you guys especially a good idea as to what is probably going to happen in the race. Crystal Racing says Liberty Media execs will replicate Randy Marsh laying in front of his PC with his pants down if Alonso wins. Turbo asks, how many years was it when, how many years since Corinne Chantok raced? 2011. He raced for HRT. And I think, didn't he race for Lotus a couple times? I can't remember. Not the, the good Lotus team, the bad Lotus team that obviously became Caterham. Hans says, guys, I was studying, why is Max P9? Why was there red flag? Help. Yeah, Leclerc crashed. What happened was Max did a poor first attempt, had to abort his lap because he made a mistake. And then on the final lap of Q3, Leclerc crashed, brought out a red flag, session would not be resumed, and that's why Max will start 9th on the grid, with Perez, his teammate, on pole. And, well, wouldn't it be something? Perez winning 3 of the first 5 races of 2023. That's definitely not what anyone had on the cards. But, yeah, what a session we have had here in Miami. Will it make for a good race tomorrow? I certainly hope so, but I'm definitely... I'm definitely not going to expect a good race. I expect some things to happen. I don't think it's going to be a race with 0 overtakes, but yeah, it's definitely going to be, there's going to be some things happening in the race, that is for sure. And of course, make sure to join me tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. UK time for the start of my race watch-along. We'll do an hour and a half or so build-up to the race, going through all the data from qualifying and also some data from practice 2 and the race runs to give you guys a good indication as to what the race pace looks like from all the teams. And then, of course, look at my best race predictions. And then we'll do the watch-along the race. And obviously, I'll commentate on the race and keep you guys up to date with what happens if you guys are unable to watch. And then, of course, we'll react to the events of the race itself as well. So make sure to join me tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. UK time, for, let's hope, is somewhat a decent Miami Grand Prix around this pretty mediocre track. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming along for this qualifying stream. Been great to have you. Don't forget to subscribe for that content coming up tomorrow. And don't forget to smash the like button if you have not already before you go. And before I go, let me end the poll in chat. Because I asked you guys, who do you think is driver of the day for qualifying in Miami? And you guys voted with 126 votes for Sergio Perez with 47% of the vote. Second, Kevin Magnussen, 27%. Alonso, third, 21%. And Bottas, fourth, on 3% of the vote. So thank you guys for voting. And thank you guys for watching. And yeah, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. And smash the like button. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ChazHD5 to continue keeping up with the content on this channel. And don't forget to join our Discord server, link below in the description if you want to join our ever-growing community here on social media. But until my race watch along tomorrow, guys, at 6:30 p.m. UK time, it has been me, ChazHD. Goodbye.